Good afternoon, Europe. Good morning, America. Good evening, Korea, because that's all the nationalities we have today here. Welcome to the second King of the Hill tournament between littlenooby and Donpork. I like to introduce my two casters today, Scorch13 and Salugi.
Hi.
Hello.
Okay, first question to you, Salugi. You were participating in the last King of the Hill. We have you now on the caster's couch. Can you say a couple words to the tournament itself, to your games against littlenooby?
Yeah, it's a really interesting format, I think, because you have to put so much thought into what kind of decks you want to bring, what you're going to be targeting. It's very different from Pantheon format, where you kind of just want to target the first deck that most people will be playing, which is usually the most popular deck in the meta. Now you have kind of a range of possible decks that your opponent might be playing, and you probably want to pick 2 or 3 of those that your whole lineup is good against, to try and kind of find potential weaknesses that your opponent might bring. Unfortunately, this can completely backfire sometimes, like it did against me last week, because I was trying to target green mid-range and like red rush, and littlenooby brought neither of those decks. So that went quite bad for me, but it's really interesting to see what both of these players are going to be bringing with their lineup. You also have to think about what decks to make your opponent play once you lose a game, and that's a really interesting way of doing things. It opens up a lot of mind games. So, for example, last week I brought red-yellow, expecting littlenooby to try and target red-yellow burn with one of his decks, and then I brought a completely different red-yellow deck to try and counter that. So there's a lot of mind games that you don't get with usual tournaments in Faeria, and a lot more thought that goes into your lineup. So I really love the format.
Yeah, basically the format is just possible because it's like a King of the Hill. We only have 2 players, so we can adapt a little bit. I think it would be quite hard to introduce something like that in a bigger tournament with much more players. So actually we can try and test out stuff in this King of the Hill, because we know, okay, we have 2 players, everything is manageable from the administrative side, so we can probably test out stuff and adapt some things. So Scorch, next question to you. We have littlenooby against Donpork today. What do you expect from the match?
I mean, littlenooby played really well in a lot of the games last week. It's again a very interesting format to see something much different than we see from the Pantheon. Donpork, of course, coming off a top 4 finish at the monthly cup last week. Littlenooby appearing in it for his second time, but I think was eliminated in the second round again there. So both players that we've had in monthly cups a couple times now, hoping that it's going to be a good match, hoping that it goes to game 9 again.
Yeah, I hope so as well. I mean, last week we had an amazing series, taking 3 hours in total, I think. So yeah, we will have to see what's going on. So we have the players up in the lobbies already. So the players can choose their decks themselves for the first matchup. What do you expect them to bring in the first matchup? I think you maybe go for a more safer deck that has not so many counters, probably.
I think it's quite important that you get the first one, so you might just bring... Well, actually, I was thinking of just bringing the weakest deck last time, until I saw littlenooby's lineup. Because I think if you've got your weakest deck, then you've got first choice, and you can kind of... You just want to make sure that decks that have like really hard counters don't line up against one of those hard counters. So you might pick your weakest deck and hope to sneak it through against something that the opponent hasn't lined up for himself perfectly, if you get what I mean.
So you wanna take the risk of trailing in the series and having your stronger decks later on.
I want to guarantee best matchups that I can. So if I've got a deck that I know has a lot of like hard counters, I'd be more likely to open with that and try and sneak it through.
Especially if it's something like that you're saying, if it's going to get hard countered and you're left with it as your last deck, you're in a bad spot.
Exactly.
Yeah, so definitely if you think something is one of the weaker ones of your lineup versus what your opponents brought, I can definitely see that as being a strategy. Little Newbie did start with blue last week, and he has a mono blue again this week, so that's possibly something he'll lean towards. But we saw quite a few players actually bring that as their prime deck in the monthly cup last week as well.
Well, another thing we saw, we see the decks already on the screen. So Little Newbie is bringing green, blue, mono green, mono blue, then a green blue deck, a green yellow deck, and a red yellow deck. Is it interesting that he's bringing 3 dual color decks instead of 3 monocolored decks? Because like the monthly was highly dominated by monocolored decks.
I think this way he gets to sneak in Huntmaster in more decks, so I think it makes some sense.
Okay, and we will.
He also played well on that green-blue last week, so I can definitely see keeping that.
And we will jump into the game. So have fun at commentating. And round 1, Little Newbie versus Donpork.
All right, so again, welcome everyone. We are into game 1 here. Little Newbie on that blue deck. Now, this actually looks like a blue 7s versus the Reavers list that he brought last week, and a very nice start getting the Mochi in hand. Hopefully going to allow him to get either a discounted Windfall or something like a Mirror Phantasm to control the game. Donpork actually appears to be running a yellow control with the Fanatics in there.
He has a very solid start as well with two of the minions that you want to see in the opening hand. The Outland Ranger and the Fanatic, which might be able to give him a sneak. Kind of a good trade with the Ranger and the Campfire going into turns 3 and 4.
Yeah, he's also going to be able to set up his Faeria collection here very early. Again, thanks to those Fanatics, going to be able to possibly move his Ranger onto Little Newbie's well down here very quickly. Little Newbie with a couple options here. He could go for a Spring... should go for a Spring Mochi, and then possibly gets the Gabriel Commander down. Yes, we actually do see him go for both of those creatures. And
I like the decision to move away from the yellow tempo player. I think generally when you boost 7s, you want to build away from your opponent and just trying to build up as much of a board as possible, and then use your movement tricks with something like the Gabriel Commander to get good trades for yourself. So we see good starts from both players.
Yeah, Donpork will definitely be looking for one of his bigger, possibly a Shaitan Vampire, or a even just go for all the deserts he can right now and get into one of those Windborn champions very early and start pushing this blue player around with those movement tricks that he has. Really start to snowball a little bit of an advantage.
I think he really has to soul drain the Gabriel Commander here. It's such a big threat. It just has to be dealt with as soon as possible.
Yeah, especially since you won't be able to clear it off with that Soul Drain again if its ability triggers, because now Gabriel Commander, of course, we saw the buff back in December, gets +1/1 now, and that's really why we've seen a resurgence of this card.
I'm interested to see whether he'll just build double Prairie on the right and set up double collecting. It looks like that Mochi is going to survive for quite a long time, because now he knows that Donpork doesn't have the second Soul Drain in hand, so he can quite comfortably set up the double collecting in between the wells with the Mochi. And yeah, Gabriel Commander is going to be really nice for him here.
Yep, I was actually going to say there, what would you have thought of using the Shifting Tide to move in the wells with the lake there, so that you could possibly either extend a little more forward, or at the very least get your Mochi in to double collect this turn, versus keeping the Shifting Tide in hand either when you actually need it, or to use it to draw a card?
I think you're spending 1 Faeria to gain 1 extra Faeria, so it doesn't actually make that much sense. It's not strictly better, or I wouldn't say it's better than actually just setting up double collection. The only thing is you could get an extra lake, so instead of just playing double Prairie, so if you are including Reaver in your deck, then maybe that would be possible. But if not, then I think just double Prairie is fine.
All right, and we do see Donpork here use those double Fanatics that he had in hand to do exactly what we talked about, moving his Outland Ranger up way more than it would normally be able to, and take out that Gabriel Commander, doing a fantastic job of limiting Little Newbie just to this Mochi collecting. And although it is in a double collection spot, Donpork completely owns the left side of the board right now.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether he's going to try and draw with his Shifting Tide. Yeah.
That is what he goes for. Does mean that he won't be able to play Barrow right now, but we can see that last Nightmare in Donpork's hand. If Little Newbie had gone for the Barrow, Little Newbie would have been almost just out of the game at that point, because he would have invested everything that he had into that Barrow just to get it cleared.
And Newbie has a very strong play next turn, playing Windfall, Barrow, and Archon. It develops multiple threats onto the board simultaneously, which is definitely what you want against a yellow deck when you know that they're running Last Nightmare. He actually chooses to play the Archon this turn.
That's a very, very desperate play to play the Archon there, and actually should know that this Campfire is in hand for Donpork.
But also, if Donpork draws Soul Drain at any time, then he's not going to be able to get the Windfall off. So I really disagree with... actually, even if Donpork didn't have the Campfire, I don't think it's correct to play the Archon in this position. And he's going to get punished for it.
Yeah, he's going to get very punished for it. You definitely want to keep your Archon either in a safer position until you can use your 7+ cards to actually trigger the Archon's ability, or you want to just keep it in hand until you can get to that point. And considering where Donpork's creatures were, I think Little Newbie definitely could have kept that for an extra turn, just because he wasn't under any immediate threat at that point. We do see Donpork pick up that Shaitan Vampire, like I was saying, get it into the aggressive spot. The dash, of course, lets him get onto the lake. Little Newbie now in a very rough spot to come back from this one.
Yeah, and now he can't even play Windfall and Beirut because he needs to +1 on the wheel. So, yeah, I think that he will get punished for that error, and that will probably be the end of the game. It's difficult to see how Newbie gets back in, even though he's got 9 Faeria. Luke can come back on the board, but it's going to have to be next turn, by which time you would expect Donpork, particularly with the Wisdom in hand, has just consolidated his lead.
Yeah, and this, as much as Little Newbie was able to set up his double collection spot with the Spring Mochi over here, Donpork's been able to do exactly the same, and the Fanatic with the jump actually allows him to be within orb pressure range at the same time as just being in double collection. Little Newbie goes for the Battletoads here, gets the Frogs down, will really be hoping to pick up a Frogify if he's running them onto this Shaitan Vampire, because that's really his only way to deal with it right now.
Yeah, but Donpork's going to reload his hand with the Wisdom, and he picks up some removal, which is going to help. His only goal now is either to try and get his opponent to 0 or to deal with the Spring Mochi. That's the only threat that Newbie has left. And the Frog is going to kind of double up that threat, but you would think that the Frog is going to need to be traded into the Vampire. So, yeah, I really like this play. It looks like he's just going to go for board control.
As soon as Little Newbie played more creatures, Donpork realized that he wasn't quite as far ahead as he would like at that point, and actually does go for the trade. Looks like he's going to get a very good Wind Soldier in here as well to clear off the Mochi.
He can... Oh, he doesn't have enough to deal with the second Toad, though, and keep the Fanatic alive. Oh, he does with the Soul Pact, yeah. So this is a full board clear. And it's really difficult to see how Newbie comes back from this. Yeah,
fantastic play there by Donpork, realizing that he could go for that full clear and really cripple Little Newbie's economy here, instead of pushing that 6 or possibly 9 orb damage there in a spot where you're both at 20, not something necessarily that you have to go for.
Yeah, the Yak attack was really something that he wanted 2 or 3 turns ago when his opponent had the double Fanatic on board. I was thinking maybe you just try and draw for a Yak attack because that would be so strong in that position. But it's just come a little bit too late for him now. And if he plays it, I think he can't win. So it would be wrong to play the Yak attack. I guess, yeah. See, now he waits for Windfall. And he only has to do that because he didn't wait for it the turn before, when actually there wasn't anywhere near as much pressure on board.
Yeah, I definitely think that Archon was a little bit of a... not only a mistake in playing it because you could have saved for the Windfall like you've been talking about, but he could have also played it to the lake on the right in a more protected position.
Yeah.
Still has the charge so it can get into that defensive spot if needed. And if you pick up another Shifting Tide, you can move that lake into a position where you can get a double prairie, to actually contest one of Donpork's creatures there. But I believe I actually missed it. Did you catch what the Spring Mochi discounted? I'm trying to go back through in my head what Little Newbies played.
That's a good point. I'm not sure it did discount anything, did it?
I thought Beru would have been the first.
It should have been the Beru, yeah. Maybe that's a bug then.
And I know we have a spectator bug. I'm not sure if it's been fixed since, but we had a spectator bug in the monthly cup that all of the buffs were showing as double for any creature that builds up power in hand. Something like Soul Eater or Firebringer we saw basically doubled the buff because it would get it in hand, and then once you played it, that effect would trigger again.
Yeah,
but
I guess we'll get to see.
Discounts did that as well, so it's kind of odd here that it would either not show it and then show it once it's played. But that may be just something that's a spectator bug for us here, and we believe Beru would be the card that is discounted, but...
Yeah, so he does have potentially a clear here with the Frogify and the Yak Attack. And actually, Donpork doesn't currently have a minion to reload the board with.
Yeah, but Donpork's in a position where he has these two aggressive deserts. He can draw all the cards that he wants at that point.
Oh.
I
was meant to Frogify first. But
yeah, that was a bit of a wrong order there from Little Newbie. And Donpork is able to finish the game.
Did the Yak Attack cost 6? I'm not sure. He had more Faeria than I expected him to after that Yak Attack, because he was on 14.
He did double collect there.
He collected, yeah, it's true.
Twice.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that just makes sense.
Well,
but yeah, missing out on the Frogify.
We see Donpork taking game number 1. It's still pretty early for Little Louis. He just woke up. It's 8 a.m. in Canada. But unfortunately, he won kind of out of time at the end, not seeing the play.
Yeah. I think Blue Sevens is a very tricky deck, particularly when you have to balance out whether you want to put something on the board just to have some presence, or if you want to wait for Windfall. It can be a really difficult deck to pilot, and I think Newbie is much more experienced with the Blue Reaver version of Blue. So if he's still new to this kind of Blue Sevens deck and he's not so comfortable in these spots, I can completely understand why he went for the Archon play instead of waiting. So maybe with just a little bit more experience, he would have waited and still had more of a chance in that game.
Yeah, it looked like he was in kind of a good position the way that it started, and then just everything got cleared early. Both of his commanders got cleared, I think, earlier than he was expecting Donpork to contest them. And then once he played that Archon, it just looked like either a desperation play because he didn't realize the next turn or wasn't planning for the next turn, and then he just got punished for it so hard. Put Donpork in such a good position at that point. We
should also say that Donpork had a great clear with the double Fanatic, which also developed the board early on in the game.
I totally agree on the Archon play as well. It was kind of weird because you know there was a campfire in hand, so if you drop the Archon, you drop it on the well and not down the middle to be easily traded off by the Fanatic, right? And usually you want to wait to trigger the Windfall and swarm the board afterwards.
But if it's 8 a.m. for Little Newbie, then I can completely understand.
So Little Newbie chooses Green Yellow Sack as Donpork's next deck, so we will see the Blue Sevens again lining up against Green Yellow. Okay, we don't know if it's Sack, but it's Green Yellow.
Yeah. This is interesting because conventionally Blue Sevens was always a very strong favorite against Green Yellow Sack. I think nowadays, Sack is so strong it's even possibly favored in this matchup. One of the big things that Blue lost for the matchup was Unbound Evolution. So Green used to build a massive Bone Collector, or it had Shaitan Assassins, and you could easily Unbound Evolution on those creatures as a form of pseudo removal. Whereas now Blue doesn't have that, and now Sack just got a buff to Doomgate. It was already strong. It's also got Huntmaster in there. I think Sack is really just strong across the board, and I think it's now favored in this matchup as well.
Yeah, Sacrifice, like we see in Donpork's hand, actually also got this annoying Nat back. Getting back to a 2-1 now actually is a creature that can contest some other creatures on board. Like we saw Little Newbie start with the Spring Mochi last game. Annoying Gnat would take that out very easily. Yeah, the Green Yellow Sack's a very interesting deck because it wants to just play a ton of small creatures and slowly build up, whether it's through Demon Wranglers to get more creatures onto the board, or whether it's through getting a big Bone Collector. Shaitan Assassin are very difficult for some of the big green and blue decks to deal with right now. And then, yeah, eventually you just get a Soul Eater that overwhelms your opponent. We saw that in the Monthly Cup last week. I forget exactly who it was that was playing the sack, but it was a one-turn 22 or 23 attack Soul Eater ended the game just because there's no response to it.
Yeah. Newbie has a very strong start with the... Oh, he doesn't go for Commander plus Lore Thief. I think that's an extremely strong start that he should go for.
I don't necessarily not like or having him pass on the Lore Thief here, just because he would have to play it with the way that he's set up now in front of his orb. I think you should have gone Commander to the other side, just because it has the Aquatic and the Charge. It can get in between the double well on the right, and you set your Lore Thief up to just step onto the well on the left here. But I think as soon as he played the Commander on this spot, you're definitely passing on the Lore Thief, just because there's no reason to play it right in front of your orb.
I think he wanted the Commander in a spot where it could deal with the Hermit, but I don't think Donpork would ever play this Hermit on turn 1 if he didn't have some way of dealing with it anyway.
Oh, that's very strong, getting the Hermit buff onto the Demon Wing as well.
Yeah, and for example, this is one of those cards that you would be able to very happily just unbound 7/6 Demon Wing to a random 5-drop. It could be the 1/1 Real Judge. But you don't have that tool anymore. And this is why I kind of think the matchup has kind of shifted more, maybe not completely in Green Yellow Sack's favor, but at least like 50-50. But I think I'm in the minority in thinking this.
I think it's probably, at least if it was a very close matchup before, it's now at least swung into Green Yellow Sack's favor. Yeah. It's not necessarily the 50-50 or maybe even 55-45 to blue. Now it would be the opposite, where Green Yellow Sack is a little more favored, just because the blue deck here basically only runs Frogify as its removal. And you maybe run 2. I don't think it's even a 3 of in that deck, just because you don't want to be sitting with 3 Frogifys in hand.
Yeah.
You actually want to continue to play your threats onto the board, play your creatures out, and then play into your bigger 7 cost. But just the amount of strong creatures that the Green Yellow Sack can produce. We see the buff Demon Wing here. We've talked about the Bone Collector that can get going, and the Soul Eater eventually. And if you have to use those Frogifys early, the Soul Eaters are just going to run you over eventually anyway.
This is a nice place from Newbie. Nice play from Newbie though, because he's trying to set up a trade with his Gabian Commander and one of the frogs on the 7/6 Demon Wing, and that would definitely be a very strong trade for him. I don't think there's necessarily any reason to go between the well with the Commander, but it's still, either way, it's still threatening double collection and potentially a trade 2 turns from now.
Yeah, the Commander, like you're saying, just because it has that charge 3, doesn't need to go in between the well. It could have sat just on the well right beside the frog there, still contest the Demon Wing, and still set up for double collection. Donpork could have actually denied that by moving the Demon Wing down a space, and would have denied that double collection, and it still would have traded in exactly the same way. So possibly that's what Little Newbie was planning ahead on, just to guarantee that double collection spot. But Little Newbie going to be 1 Faeria off from the Windfall here. Possibly just goes for another Battletoads. The Green Yellow Sack doesn't have a lot of movement, depending on if you're running Huntmaster or the Fanatics in this list as well. And it also doesn't have any form of AoE. So getting a ton of small creatures onto the board to either guarantee that you out-collect your opponent or that you just have a lot of options to deal with whatever your opponent plays is something that you can really get ahead of them in this matchup.
Personally, right now, I like waiting for Windfall because you have the Lore Thief in hand. Windfall and Lore Thief is such a powerful combination where you're just cycling everything, and I don't think there's any real necessity to kind of delay that by a turn or take any risks. You don't really need to fill the board that much more just yet. You might want to do so later on in the game. But there's not really anything you're too scared of. Maybe a Yak Attack. I like just waiting for Windfall and then Lore Thief next turn, and maybe you can set up the Archon with something else. Looks like he's going to go for the Battletoads.
The Battletoads, at least the way the board looks currently, does allow Little Newbie to possibly collect off all 4 wells next turn, and that gets him right back up to the Windfall anyway. So possibly that's the play that he's going to go for. Donpork does pick up a Soul Drain, so he'll be able to clear off 2 of these Toads if that's what he chooses to go for. We'll need another Desert to do it, but that possibly allows him to get an Annoying Gnat into a good position, so looking like a very good response here from Donpork.
Yeah. If I'm playing against Zach and my opponent plays double Prairie, usually I'm very worried about a Yak Attack next turn. And I think he could potentially have been punished by a Yak Attack in this spot because maybe he wouldn't have been able to collect from any of the wells on the right as we see it, and then he wouldn't be able to play the Windfall. But he doesn't actually have the Yak Attack in hand, and he should be able to get his Windfall off, which is definitely what's important right now. I will collect off of 3 wells. Again, if he chooses to move that commander forward. Phantasm is a really nice pickup. You really want to draw into all of your transform effects as early as possible in this matchup. I don't think it's too necessary to do it. Or maybe he's going to do it on the Demon Wing. I think I prefer to just see him try and set up the Frog in a way where it can double collect and finish off the 7/6 if that chooses to trade into the commander and save the Phantasm for a Soul Collector, but it depends what he draws off this Lore Thief.
Yeah, Mirror Phantasm is another good one just because of the transform that you can deal with one of those big threats like we talked about. It's also a great target onto these frogs. You can jump into a good position and then buff them up just to keep them alive, because right now you can see the Annoying Gnat here will kill the frog, and then depending on where it spawns, it might be in a position to kill the other one next turn. There also is a possibility where Little Newbie could have gone for the Gabe on the left side to attempt to kill off the Demon Wing, but I think it's way better to play it onto the right in a position where you can just try to snowball that side.
Oh,
actually does go for the Phantasm.
This play, I don't like this play because I think when you're against Green Yellow Sack, you want to save all your transform effects for your opponent's creatures. At the very least, he could have traded with the Frog into the Village Elder and then Phantasmed it. That way you get an extra collection. And
he had already moved.
Oh, he'd already moved the Frog.
He had already moved because it was on the prairie, just in between the Mirror Phantasm and the Debrian Archon. So he had already moved there. So the Frog there was in a position where the Annoying Gnat was going to kill it. So I can see why he went for the transform to keep his pressure up on the right side here. But yeah, that definitely an interesting play to go for the Phantasm to keep his own board pressure versus reducing Donpork's when one of those big Soul Eaters does come down. Not a terrible respawn there from the Gnat. Would have liked it in probably a more aggressive spot or possibly in on the left side, but is going to be in a spot where it possibly contests the second Phantasm here on the right.
Yeah, I think Donpork's trying to work out if he could collect. Oh, he chooses to go for the trade just for the extra card. That's interesting.
Yeah, that did look like he was trying to see if there was some way he could get a land into a position to collect off of that well with the Wind Soldier there.
Now choosing whether or not he wants to actually trade the Wind Soldier into the Phantasm, I think, because the Gnat's there anyway.
Yeah, the Gnat can finish off. Wind Soldier is going to come down and kill off the commander on the left here, which is a fantastic play. Gives Donpork full control over the left side, at least for now, with this giant Demon Wing over here.
Aurora is a fantastic draw there for Little Newbie. He's going to be able to double collect and get a very favourable trade and take back complete control of the left-hand side.
Yeah, that Archon will be in a position where it can push up to the position the Frog is currently sitting on, and it'll be able to contest anything along that line thanks to the charge. Aurora, I possibly think you would do all the movements first and play the Aurora in between the Frog and the Archon right now, just because then you can push your Archon up on a following turn and leave Aurora as your collector.
So
what do you think of going for the Lore Thief to draw as well?
Yeah, I definitely want to see Aurora played first and then Lore Thief, probably on the spot that the Archon's on now. I'm struggling to see any alternate play here than just double collect, trade, and drop both of your cards. Seems to be what he's going for.
Yeah, Aurora could come down in between the Phantasms on the right, but I think that denies you pushing that Phantasm up, like Little Newbie just went for. So I definitely like coming.
He might not play Lore Thief just in case he draws Windfall. So if he draws Windfall next turn, then he wouldn't quite have the Faeria to play it, so he chooses to hold on to the Lore Thief just in case he gets that draw, which is, definitely a very heads-up play from Newbie.
Yeah, sometimes you want to keep your Lore Thief in hand, even just if he draws a Spring Mochi next turn, because then he can play that and then cycle all the draw cards instead of drawing this turn and possibly getting into a position where he can't get that discount right away. So that's something that you have to kind of have in the back of your mind as well. Another good sacrifice here for Donpork, allowing him to get a Demon Wing to contest the Mirror Phantasm. The Shaitan Assassin in hand right now could be a lot of trouble to deal with for Little Newbie.
Yeah, but where do you play it? Because you want some kind of board presence on the left-hand side. But you know that Little Newbie's playing Shifting Tides. So if he draws a Shifting Tide, then he's going to be able to trade into the shield kind of for free with Aurora, which would be very strong, I think. He does decide to play it on the right, on the left.
Yeah, I was going to say his other creatures are currently set up in good enough positions to deal with the two Mirror Phantasms on the right, so I definitely think that you play it on the left instead. Even if Aurora does get that good trade to pop the protection there, it still trades into the Archon for free. So not a lot Little Newbie can do to deal with that right now. Little Newbie does pick up the Windfall,
Yeah. So he's really going to be rewarded for holding onto the Lore Thief, and Windfall plus Lore Thief is going to be a very strong play, and he's going to hope to draw into maybe some more Archons, and probably, I think a Shifting Tide is still too good to kind of pass up in this spot, so he's definitely going to be looking to try and draw into something like that, and then just double collect again with the Phantasm, and trying to hold on for a couple more turns.
Yeah, that open ocean spot just behind the Mirror Phantasms there would be fantastic to get a lake there and play the Lore Thief onto that spot. But you want to keep your power wheel open until you see all the options that you're going to have. So Windfall into Lore Thief will be the play that comes down first, and that means that you're not necessarily going to get those proper lands set up.
I'd certainly like to see Windfall and then Lore Thief in front of the orb before using the power wheel. He's going to use it first. Maybe he's not going to Lore Thief this turn then, in which case I would say, when are you ever going to... Oh, okay. So he chooses to hold on to the Windfall. He does draw the Shifting Tides, so he can get a nice trade if he wants it.
And actually does go for the trade on that side as well. Little Newbie set up here as a very defensive play to protect his Archon here, getting the Lore Thief and Aurora in position to kill off the Assassin, but that Nat is going to kill one of them.
Maybe just ran out of time at the end there, not playing the Shifting Tide. I think he possibly wanted to do it, because I don't see why he would leave the Aurora in a spot where it can trade with the Nat. But yeah, I think he just ran out of time there. Looked like he was hovering over Commander as well and wanted to play that too. So that's a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah, we actually have seen an interesting land placement development here. Little Newbie's gone for a lot of prairies to push his lands out into the double collection spots. He's also denying the amount that Donpork can push up aggressively with his lands by doing that as well. But he also doesn't have a lot of lakes set up right now. So the only spot, if he had gone for the Gabrian Commander, would have been to play it on that lake on the right side. And if if its ability doesn't trigger to gain the flying, it's in a position where it doesn't have a lot of options to move. So it'll be interesting to see which setup of lands Little Newbie goes for next turn, because he really needs to get some more lakes down to give him more options for his creatures.
Yeah, I think Newbie's strategy has been to develop a lot of prairies and try to not allow Donpork to get a very strong aggressive land, just because Huntmaster is such a big threat, particularly with the Shaitan Assassin on board, and later on in the game with stuff like Soul Collector, or Soul Eater, or whatever it's called. I think he's playing the game very smart in terms of developing lots of prairies, just because there is a huge threat from Huntmaster. We haven't actually seen one yet, so Donpork might not be playing it. But it is backfiring a little bit in that he doesn't have a lot of lakes in order to drop creatures or to have kind of mobility for the Gabrian Commander.
Yeah, and we're getting kind of to the halfway point here. Donpork sitting on 17 cards, Little Newbie on 18, and both players have really just been jockeying for position around the board. Neither has taken a clear advantage here, but Little Newbie has played one Mirror Phantasm, and Donpork hasn't played either of his Soul Eaters, actually still not even on the lands to play a Soul Eater, and hasn't got a Bone Collector. I'm almost wondering if there aren't Bone Collectors run in this list, if Nat has taken them out.
I'd struggle to ever cut Bone Collector from any green-yellow sack deck. I like playing both the creatures on the right and then just drawing this turn. I think you have to draw.
Does go for the draw. Ooh, Shifting Tides. 2 Shifting Tides, always really nice to have in hand, because like we saw Donpork do last game with the Fanatics, double movement gives you a lot of options.
Yeah.
And it does give extra draws as well. I really like the play to get the Spring Mochi down basically as early as possible, because you never want to draw something that's over 7 costs that you could have got the discount on, and when you have a Mochi in hand. Little Newbie's still in a position right now where that Shaitan Assassin is going to continue to give him trouble. These Nats are set up to kill off possibly anything that comes down on the left, and not going to allow Little Newbie to get the beneficial trade that he wants.
Yeah, I really like just trading off something. Again, he could have used the Shifting Tide to trade off the Law Thief into the protection, and just not allowing the Nats to get value. I think it's a worthwhile play, but it's really difficult to see what Newbie's win condition is now. Maybe it's just trying to get his opponent to 0 by killing Nats. Maybe he has to change how he plays this matchup. Law Thief is an excellent draw, by the way. He has to play Windfall.
Another fantastic one. Has to go for the Windfall, like you're saying. We've said that kind of over a course of turns now, but Little Newbie actually still hasn't been in a position where that Windfall would have kind of helped him swing the board back into his favor, just because he hasn't had the creatures to play. This commander right now, though, you really want that ability to trigger, because a Nat can kill it for very discounted as well.
Okay, so I think the Yak attack must have got the buff there from the Mochi. So surely the Yak attack should cost 6, unless there's an error in the game somewhere. I think he's only played 1 Mochi so far this game, right?
Yeah, just that one has come down. He's got a second one in hand that we just saw him draw. I still think this is a turn where you go for a Windfall. Is there a Yak attack on this turn that you can go for?
Well, I'm thinking you can Shifting Tide your 5/3 to hit face at any point in the game. If you've got, you could potentially start setting up for Yak attack lethals here with the Gabrian Commander and just hitting into the annoying Nats, because that's going to take him down to 9. Gabrian Commander's taking him down to 4. Okay. He's not going to go for it, but not this turn anyway. But I think that's definitely...
Shifting Tide. Use the Shifting. Still doesn't go for the Shifting Tide to take the Mochi over and kill off the Assassin.
But he has that option next turn anyway with the Law Thief, so it's okay. I don't think it's going to make too much difference in this scenario. It's not like leaving your Aurora out to get killed by the by one of the Nats. But yeah, I think...
I was going to say, unfortunate spawn of the annoying Nat there for Little Newbie. He went for the Gabrian Commander, killing it so he could get a little bit of extra value, and then it spawned right near the Commander so it could kill it and deny that value. So Donpork does go for that kill again. Is playing
We see
Huntmasters
the
in there. There we
Huntmaster.
go.
Yeah.
So that possibly allows Donpork to move his Shaitan Assassin over and kill off the Archon. A Nat can step up, kill the Spring Mochi. Even the Soul Drain in hand can kill the Mochi directly in the middle. And that leaves Little Newbie with just the Lore Thief on board in a really tough spot.
Yeah, and not dealing with the Shaitan Assassin he's going to be really punished for it. But he doesn't
my
actually
mistake.
have
No,
the
he couldn't have
forest,
gone
does
for
he?
that.
He's used the word,
Actually
yeah,
was
so he
thinking
can't
of
move.
old Huntmaster there, so
Yeah.
was not able to go for the Assassin play. Like
So this
it was...
is one of the times when the new assassin is slightly worse than the old assassin.
But does go for everything else on that clear. A second Yak attack
Ooh.
picked up for Little Newbie.
Is it lethal? You
2,
might
4.
have
I don't
lethal
believe
here
you can get your Archon to go.
with shifting tide.
You could double shift it.
Collect. I think depending on where the Nats land, you might have lethal. Like if a Nat lands next to the Lore Thief and he can trade in. Oh, he's not going to go for it.
Is setting up.
Oh, maybe he is.
Oh, okay.
It looks like he is. So if you trade,
Oh, he
Trade.
can go for a Yak attack to kill off the Nat, and then kill off the Hermit, and the Archon can go for the orb there.
yeah. So it's going to be very dependent on where these Nats land.
So would have to kill off the Nat directly in front of the orb first,
Yeah.
just so that the Hermit buff doesn't go onto it. That is an okay spot. And then you kill the second Nat. Oh,
Oh.
actually goes for the Assassin instead. Okay.
Did he miss lethal then?
I don't believe so. I think he was still one off, because one more Nat would have died, and that would have
Yeah.
taken Donpork down. He'd be at 1 right now. I don't think you could have killed a Nat again, because you had to kill the Hermit with one of the Angry Yaks.
Depending on where it landed, you could shifting tide it toward your Lore Thief to trade off, possibly.
I also think that Little Newbie could have shifting tide the Lore Thief to kill off the Assassin if that's something he was concerned
Yeah.
about, instead of going for it that way, and a Yak could have killed the Nat there.
Yeah, that's possibly one that we can look at as kind of a probabilistic lethal. So maybe there was like a 40% chance of lethal or something like that. I think it's going to be difficult for Donpork to get back into this game. Still haven't seen any Soul Eaters, and we're down to the last 11 cards now in the
I
deck.
believe that's actually game. The only way that Donpork doesn't die next turn to this Archon is trading in both of his Nats to kill it off, and that would deal 4 damage and kill him anyway. So I believe that's game for Little Newbie.
Yeah, I don't see any way back now.
Especially not drawing into anything. Drew the Elderwood
Yeah.
Hermit, which good for a sacrifice, but no
Yeah.
sacrifice cards in hand. Draws those Huntmasters just way too late into the game, and actually does kill himself off of the Nat clears there.
Yep. So the Nats kind of backfired for Donpork there. What do you kind of think he'll make Little Newbie play?
So Donpork will be sticking with the green-yellow sack, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so...
Yeah, Donpork can choose now Little Newbie stack and has to stick with the green yellow sack.
Yeah. See, usually as the sack player, I would want to pick green, or I'd want to pick yellow for Yellow Rush. I don't think Newbie's playing yellow, is he?
He's not, no.
So I'd want to pick green, but with 3 Angry Nats in the deck, or Irritating Nats, I'm not sure I'd want to. Because I think they make the matchup against green a lot worse, because they can land in a horrible position and allow something big of yours to get slammed, just by hitting into the nut.
But what I want to say, I think this game was one of the most exciting games I have seen in the last couple of weeks, because it was so, like, you had so much opportunities every turn to play it.
Yeah.
And
It was very tense for a long
Yes,
time. It could have swung either
definitely.
way.
And I really enjoyed watching this game. So Donpork chose green for Little Newbie. So we will see green against green yellow sack in the next game.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's okay. like you mentioned there, Salugi, like you don't mind in that matchup. Your Shaitan Assassins are going to be very difficult for green to play against. Sorry, unless they're running Falcon Dives to take them out. Even your Demon Wing possibly trades up in certain spots if it gets like a Hermit buff like we saw last game. But yeah, the annoying Nats are going to be, I won't say useless, but almost useless in that matchup. You would need 2 to take out a Wood Elemental. They're terrible against Living Willows. And then anything big, you possibly get slammed in a really bad spot. So I think they're very, very difficult cards to see get a lot of value in this matchup.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the ways that green can actually deal with the Death Touch creatures that the sack deck is going to play. So if you had say a Death Walker and a Nat spawn next to it, you can just get slammed, and immediately all of the value that you wanted from your Death Walker would be removed from the game. And that's kind of one of the few ways that Sack can actually lose this matchup. It should be very favored for Sack.
Yeah, we actually saw exactly that, what you're saying there, in the monthly cup as well. There was a Deathwalker in a good placement, and it was I think it was just an Elderwood Hermit came down directly beside it, in between the orb as well, and it just allowed a perfect slam. Just completely killed the game there. But green, like we're saying, those big slam is basically the point of the deck. We actually see Doomgate now. Okay. Of course, Doomgate kind of makes sense in a sacrifice deck, but it still wasn't seen for a long time. Got the upgraded art here, upgraded art onto Ostrogoth. It looks pretty strong again now.
I think it's one of the strongest cards in the game currently, particularly in this sort of deck, or maybe a mono-yellow sack deck, but in this position where he's got the annoying Nat already and the Doomgate, I think he's definitely going to go for it. I think he wants to play the Doomgate in a position where it can target a face rather than in kind of where it would be collecting. Yeah.
Doomgate very strong if you get it down early in certain matchups. Something like Red can deal with it very easily with a Flame Spitter or Ground Shaker to take it out right away, but in this spot where you're against green, that's going to take a while to not only put pressure on you or the Doomgate, it has no direct way to remove it right now when it's most vulnerable. We see Little Newbie possibly could go for an Oakfather here, but realistically he probably plays the Living Willows to start getting his Faeria collection off the wells, and that's going to allow Donpork probably enough time to get the Doomgate at least rolling, if not triggering at a very early stage here.
I think... Well, how do you feel about just going aggressive with the Oakfather? Just going, straight through the middle, dropping the Oakfather, and then looking to get a good slam on either the Orb or on Doomgate. Oh, he doesn't play the Oakfather this turn.
I'm surprised he didn't go for the Oakfather. But yeah, it's something that you have to possibly change up your strategy, just because you really can't allow that Doomgate. We see it now go to 5. Next turn it's going to go to 9. If you don't deal with it right away, this Doomgate triggers in 2 turns right now. Yeah. Donpork is going to have a really good answer for this aggression from Little Newbie with the Shaitan Assassin here. This is looking very good for the sacrifice player here.
Yeah. Oh, and, well, he would have been able to take out the shield with the slam, but he wouldn't have been able to play the Willow to deal with the rest. So,
I mean, that's possibly a position where you take the bad trade in order to kill the Doomgate right there. If Little Newbie had gone for the Oakfather last turn, he would have killed the Nat again, the Doomgate, and dealt 5 to face. Donpork would have been on 9 if he had gone for that play. Now, of course, you lose the Oakfather in a bad trade against the protection of the Shaitan Assassin, but it would have cleared everything there. Or, like you said, you could have gone for hitting the Nat, but...
I think he'd just take the bad trade. I agree. And then he could have played the Willow, and Donpork
you would have reset just fine.
Yeah. But then you'd still be on 0 Faeria with really bad lands, which you're kind of forced into. It's possibly just a losing line anyway. I think we've just seen a win on turn 2 withdrawing this Doomgate, to be honest. The only way I guess he can get back into the game was with something like Kodama and then draw a Huntmaster.
This
Or maybe
is
he
just have
just
to
plays...
be, yeah, Willow.
Ooh.
Okay. So it's Willow to protect, and then Oakfather hopefully to get that slam again next turn. But if
it's not as
Donpork moves...
good now.
No, definitely not.
Because he can kind of play around it.
Believe you just sacrifice the Nat. You don't really need it to hit the Oakfather first, just because that Oakfather is going to die to the Death Touch. But the Shaitan Assassin can simply move up a space and kill off the Living Willow, instead of probably what Little Newbie was hoping for would be that Donpork would move directly in front of the Doomgate, still allow him the slam there. If the Nat does spawn directly in front of the Doomgate, the Oakfather will get the slam. So it's possible that Donpork doesn't go for the sacrifice, but I think you have to, just to get your Doomgate up to 9. Even if the Oakfather does get a slam line, it's still going to survive. So
I was going to say, I kind of like sacking the Elder instead of the Nat. So I think you want... I think you want a guarantee on where the Nat actually lands. I don't think you want to let it die and then have it spawn right next to, say, the Doomgate, and then you lose a load of health on your Doomgate. So I do kind of like not sacrificing the Nat on this occasion. Feed could be a really good... Yeah, it's a really good draw here. I think he'll feed the Willow and just try and look for Huntmaster.
Getting another Oakfather, yeah, not going to be enough here. Of course, can kill off the Assassin here with the Oakfather, but really nice play by Donpork, like you were saying, to sacrifice something other than the Nat, guarantee the way that his creatures were set up there. Really didn't matter where the Hermit buff went, you were just using it in order to still get a sacrifice to buff your Doomgate life and have your creatures set up in the right positions to play around Slam. I think that was very heads up by Donpork.
Yeah, I think I slightly prefer sacking the Village Elder instead of the Hermit, just because, as you say, the buff isn't really so important in this case. But maybe he's playing around something like Falcon Dive. Maybe Falcon Dive would be a good way for Newbie to get back into the game. So actually the buff landing on the Assassin is actually relevant.
Yeah, that's a fair point. If Falcon Dive would have killed the Assassin without the Oakfather having to die in the process here. Should point out, the game isn't necessarily over. Ostrogoth is a 13-13, so it is not going to one-shot Little Newbie here, still at 20 life, but I really don't see how Little Newbie is going to defend. He can put this Wood Elemental essentially in the way, but after that, it's just such a strong position.
Yeah.
I definitely think Little Newbie's passive play of not getting the Oakfather down as soon as he was able to really punished him again this turn, or this game, sorry.
I think it only would have delayed the game, though. I don't see a way that he would have won, even if he did put it forward, because if you lose an Oakfather to, say, a Shaitan Assassin, or just to the shield of a Shaitan Assassin, you're probably losing the game anyway.
Yeah, that is a fair point. It would have been still very difficult for him to come back just because he was set up in such an awkward position. We actually see a good respawn there from the Nat going right in front.
Having said that, we haven't actually seen any Soul Eaters in the deck yet. So maybe this Ostrogoth is the only... There's been lots of little sack targets. Maybe the Ostrogoth is the only win condition. Maybe it's not even running Soul Eaters, and that's why Donpork has been kind of more happy to build double prairie rather than just going for the special lands in this game and the last game.
Yeah, I don't think we actually even saw him got to the 3 forests in the last game, but he got pretty deep into the deck. I think we were on like 11 cards or so by the end of it. And then again, 11 cards into this game, and we haven't seen a single Soul Eater pop through all of those. So yeah, very interesting to see. Little Newbie just trying to do all that he can. He may realize that as well, that he saw so much of last game, and he's seeing the way Donpork's playing his lands here. He's just trying to put as much as he can in front of this Ostrogoth. He possibly is able to stop it next turn with the Feral Kodama. The Shaitan Assassin is a great pickup, though.
So we've seen no fanatics in this deck? Oh, but we saw a Huntmaster.
We did see two
So-
Huntmasters in that last game, yes.
I think Donpork should just build a aggressive land this turn while he can with the Nat in the position it's in, just for when he draws a Huntmaster.
I think that would have been very strong to go for. He doesn't necessarily need to because he's got the Prairie on the right there. Little Newbie's play next turn looks like it's +1 Kodama unless he draws something else. So Donpork's still in a position where he can push those lands up the right side if that's what he wants to go for, but this Shaitan Assassin
Ooh.
just so strong to almost guarantee that Ostrogoth is going to be in a good position to go aggressive next turn.
He is down to 10 though. Maybe there's some kind of sneaky lethal. I don't know. I don't think there is, but
Oh, I think that's a mistake.
not sure. This way. Oh, we do see a Soul Eater. Okay.
Yeah, so okay. So the Grove Guardian came down in a position there where the Demon Wing and Annoying Gnat can kill it. Little Newbie was trying to place it in a safe enough position where it would just kill off the Ostrogoth, and the only spot would have been directly beside his orb, so only the Demon Wing could hit it. Now the Soul Drain in Donpork's hand does allow him to kill that anyway, but that was, I believe, the spot that it would have been safest in.
Ostrogoth has Slam, so if he had it next to the orb, he still would have done 13 damage to the orb.
That I did not consider. Yes, forgot that Ostrogoth has Slam, so that is what Little Newbie was playing around there.
The solo Huntmaster.
So that is
So
going
sad.
to be game to Donpork through the Doomgate. A fantastic game there, getting it down early enough to really snowball the game, force Little Newbie into a bad spot, and takes the
Yep.
game.
And now we're back to 1-1. And Newbie has to play green.
That's
Is that-
2-1 for...
It's 2-1. Yeah, sorry, 2-1
Yeah.
to Donpork, right?
Yeah, 2-1 in favor of Donpork. Little Newbie has to stick with his green, and I think it's kind of obvious. He chooses red for Donpork. So we will see a green from Little Newbie against a red from Donpork. I know the red deck. I played this deck myself a lot. So
Oh, okay.
Is it the red combat, or is it more of a red rush mid-range style?
Well, Donpork also has red-yellow, right? So maybe that's the angry version, but it could also be burn. So maybe you want to take burn instead of red, because red might be rush or mid-range, which has a slightly better matchup against green than burn. I'm
Yeah, I
not
think
sure,
burn is...
but
I don't want to
think
kill
Burn's
the
pretty
hype, so I
against
don't
me.
want to spoil.
Okay.
So we will see green against red now, and Donpork is
Okay.
leading 2-1 at the moment. So, but green has a pretty solid matchup against red, so
yeah, it does.
probably.
I think it does depend on the style. I've been this week. I've been playing a red combat that's more around the Faeria generation than like some of the burn cards. So using like the Underground Boss, Underground Brigand, and I actually had great success against green in that matchup. Now some of those greens were kind of awkward, more than the standard green that we're seeing here from Little Newbie. But ooh, a Garridan in there. So yeah, it is the, we'll say the Gift of Steel style, but runs the Underground Brigands. I think it just runs everything of the combat variant, trying to get as much value as possible with those Gift of Steels, and the Horsemaster for some great movement tricks.
It could still be Noah's Cobbled Barracks.
Yeah, the Barracks is another good one that gives you a lot of really good trades.
I'm really interested to see that he threw away the Garridan there. I think one of his best chances of winning the matchup is possibly with a strong Garridan. And he already had the Brigand and the Horsemaster in hand. So maybe he was looking for single target removal like Flame Burst or Ciphers, but I think the Garridan could potentially have been one of his few ways to actually win this game.
Yeah, I think you'd rather draw into Garridan than have it in your opening hand, though, just because you want your other creatures on the board. You're not going to get a good Garridan by itself against green. Obviously, its creatures are going to be way too big for you to do that in one turn. So you need some other combat, you need some other ability, something like the Ground Shaker here, and then into Garridan. So I definitely can see why he would have thrown it away, but yeah, like you said, one of the biggest ways to win the game is a big AoE comeback. So probably we'll see both Underground Brigands come down here. Mountain
Mountain on the other side, and then
I would think Mountain on the other side and play both Brigands, get you set up for double collection next turn, but actually goes for the Ground Shaker. So this is setting up for Explore, double Prairie, Huntmaster next turn, and we'll see if Little Newbie responds with Kodama in front of his Wood Elemental or to the other side, setting up for the double collection like he was going for last turn.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that Newbie went for the lands to the side of the orb. Almost always I go for these lands, but if I've got Wood Elemental and a Kodama in my hand, I'll always open in front and then just go Wood Elemental to one side. Because Kodama is so threatening in this position it's in now, but one spot up on turn 3. That just wins so many games on its own. I prefer to have it that one space further ahead with that specific opening. Yeah,
that one spot, like you're saying, if it's one spot ahead right now, the jump allows you to contest anything your opponent does, no matter what it is. Yeah. I think going for the other side there was setting up for the double and then go for something like a Huntmaster play on a follow-up turn to get you into the right position, but it definitely seemed like you could have just gone for that one more aggressive space instead of relying on drawing into the Huntmaster. But
this way has worked out better.
Yeah, even still, there's nothing really that Donpork's going to be able to do, at least for this turn, to contest this Kodama.
And it's interesting to note that he has to play Explore and then a red in between the wells, I think, for Brigand, but then he's just giving the land to his opponent. Okay, so he steps to stop his opponent from having this land to jump onto.
And stop the collection there as well, the one extra Faeria, unless little Newbie goes in between the wells with his prairies. So,
but now he can't put the Brigands in a spot where it can finish off this Kodama. So yeah, this is one of the things that makes Slam really difficult to play around. There's no way he can get this Brigand close enough to finish off the Kodama, and he's really gonna that's gonna be really bad for him. And there wasn't anything that he could possibly do.
Yeah, so Little Newbie does go for the double Prairie. Was going to say there he could have gone for the extra forest to get the Therian Golem down, but it would have been in just such a bad position that you really didn't need to go for it. And Donpork would have had a double Prairie Horsemaster response, but that means that he couldn't have placed the other Prairie to get the Brigand on the left to actually collect there. So just again in a really awkward position here for Donpork.
Really smart play from Newbie to buff up the Kodama to play around ciphers, but also because he knows that Donpork's not actually going to have enough for Bombslinger next turn. So really smart for him to notice that and decide that it's worth it to play the guidance onto this Kodama.
Yeah, actually also plays around Horsemaster, because Donpork could have gone double Prairie basically in between all of his lands right now and sent that Brigand from the left all the way over to kill the Kodama. So very heads up from Little Newbie to buff that. Also knowing that Donpork's sitting on 4 Faeria, possibly get something again from that Horsemaster play, but yeah, would have been very awkward at 4 to deal with it directly through events.
I think it's really unfortunate Donpork can't set up Cypher this turn. Because that's kind of one of the only ways that he will ever actually win this game, with a huge cipher.
I've again, like I had played a matchup like this, and I actually got Cypher down, whether Little Newbie's running it or not, but I had Cypher against a Runin matchup, that it was just because I got Cypher down so early, was able to snowball the game. Every time you kill Runin, yes, she gets that discounted cost, but it's an interesting interaction that if you get Cypher down early enough in a position where you can kill just a creature from green, you can completely snowball the game because they don't have that hard removal. This is another spot where possibly you can go for it, but I believe you'd have to trade off one of your Brigands first so that it's not in a slam spot from the Kodama.
I think you can play a Cypher next to the well and then just move the Brigand up 1, and then you don't really care at all about the 5 damage to face, or I guess 9 damage to face if he has Kodama, but even Kodama, if he has Huntmaster for Kodama, but even then he would probably just take out Cypher. So I think you're fine just stepping up and not really caring about slam damage into face.
Well, no, not necessarily the slam damage into face, slam to kill off Cypher. If he steps up one with the Underground Brigand, that Kodama can come back forward and kill both. So you
but if
possibly
Cypher's
have
next to the well on the left...
Oh, on the left side, yes.
Yeah.
With that Horsemaster in hand, yeah, you can definitely go for something like that. Yeah, Donpork in a very awkward spot now. Cypher is going to be, at least from what he's got in hand, his only win condition. Interesting to point out the way that everything has set up. Garridan could have actually done some work here, like you were saying at the start of the game. Donpork in a position where he could recover quite a bit of Faeria through these Underground Brigands.
Yep. And then...
Okay, that's an okay enough position.
Ooh, but he gets really punished by Huntmaster. He's fortunate that Nooby doesn't have it. If Nooby had Huntmaster, he could Huntmaster his Kodama up in front of the orb, or maybe on the spot that Therian Golem's on now, and then just hit face and Cypher dies for free. So I really expect to see Nooby draw heavily for this Huntmaster. Oh, there it is. And that's surely game.
Yeah, Therian Golem probably steps up and kills the Underground Brigand on the right there. Huntmaster jumps the Kodama up onto the spot Therian Golem is currently on, just exactly like you were saying, attacks the orb for 9 as well as killing Cypher, and that, at least for now, seems like there's no way Donpork's going to be able to come back from that.
These are kind of the trays that Donpork needs to win the game with the massive slam value. If Nooby's getting it, then I can't see any way back.
And this is actually a spot where the new Huntmaster... it would have been exactly the same because you could have played Huntmaster on that forest that you jumped the Kodama to, but Huntmaster just gets into such a safe position here.
Kodama wouldn't have been in a spot where...
You could have placed it where the Underground Brigand
was. Jumped on one of his,
then jumped onto exactly the same spot here.
Yeah,
does pick up the Bomb Slinger to deal with the Underground or the Feral Kodama here.
Yeah, and it looks like Nooby isn't playing Falcon Dives, so maybe because we haven't seen a Falcon Dive, maybe the Bomb Slinger can kind of get him back into the game.
He needs another event. Or possibly the Kobold Barracks, like we've been discussing there, just because right now, and the Elderwood Embrace is a fantastic pickup to go onto this Therian Golem.
I think feeding the Huntmaster is a good play because we're so close. Okay, he's just going to do it like this.
I'd like to see Forest. Yeah. Oh, okay. Oakfather's another good one now that he's picked it up. I was going to say Oakfather onto the left, and
I would have even
the Grove Guardian, but the
Oakfather's I would have even
fantastic.
Played the Golem and then faired it and then played both the Father and the Grove Guardian, or the other way around even. Actually, but with the Oak Father down, he can't play around. He can't just block the orb. So this is
the slam was so much more impactful there once he got it onto the Oak Father. So very strong game by Little Nooby to pull back into that defensive position with his Feral Kodama and really just wait out until he got those trades that he wanted. Really limited what Donpork was really able to do that game. Fantastic one there. Little Nooby takes it and evens it up at 2-2.
Yeah, green taking out red is kind of a mismatch for red at all. It's really tough for most of the red decks to get an advantage over green.
Yeah.
So what do you expect? Donpork has to stick with his red deck. What would you give the opponent?
Sack.
Yeah, I think so too. Probably green yellow.
Yeah, I think Sack's one that you can get a lot of value off of, whether it's with those Brigands getting value from just the little creatures that Sack has. You get a lot of the combat triggers, or even just like a Ground Shaker gets a lot of value in that matchup. If he's running Cypher's Wrath, they're very good because that means killing a Gnat with one of those deals 4 damage to the orb. So it's another great matchup there.
So yeah, Donpork's still got red and possibly a red-yellow burn deck left. So Nooby's done really well to get his kind of sack deck in a position where he's going to be able to counter pick against something that isn't the red-yellow deck that Donpork's got if he does indeed lose against the red control. So it's kind of worked out all right for Little Nooby. He's not going to be really heavily punished by 2 counter decks to his to one of his decks, which is one of the worst things that can happen in this sort of format.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be left on something really weak as last. So we are getting into the game here. We'll see what little newbie is on.
Yep, and we see the sack.
We do see the sacrifice, yeah.
Seems like a more conventional sack. Interesting that it's playing the Origin Fanatic instead of the Huntmaster. Possibly playing both, but I don't think you would usually play both. So we've been having some discussions in Team Frost about whether Huntmaster or Fanatic is better. A couple of us think that Huntmaster is, a couple of us think Fanatic is. It's probably pretty close. Interesting to see that Newbie has gone for the Fanatic, and maybe he's just not running as many of the Death Touch creatures. So maybe we're just going to see the Assassins rather than the Assassins and the Death Lords, or the 6/4s.
Yeah, the Deathwalkers I actually don't believe we saw in Donpork's sacrifice deck either, so it possibly has shifted just to be those Assassins.
Yeah.
Again, very strong with the protection on them, but this red deck is possibly going to be able to get a lot of value out of those. Something like Groundshaker can tick those away very nicely. Do you think we see Donpork go for the Groundshaker setup at turn 1 play again here? Just seems like the only thing he has.
I definitely like it, because generally when you're a red control deck, you want to deny, just remove all of the sack targets from the board when you can. So like right now it would have been a lot worse if Newbie had Demon Wrangler in hand, which looked like he was trying to set up. So usually I would play the Cypher, but with such a great target for the Groundshaker, I definitely prefer the Groundshaker in this spot.
There we actually do see the Kobold Barracks. And interestingly enough, we do see the Deathwalker come out from Little Newbie, just as we were discussing there.
Yeah.
Donpork going to move his Groundshaker into a position where it can get the Horsemaster next turn. And we actually did see Bomb Slingers out of Donpork in that last game there. So that's going to be something that, if he draws into it in the right spot, can very easily deal with this Deathwalker.
Yep, and Donpork now wishing he held on to the Groundshaker, even though I think in general it was correct to hang on to it.
This actually looks like a very good setup. You can go Desert directly in front of the Village Elder. Unfortunately, stops your Village Elder on the left from collecting any Faeria, but that allows you to Bone Collector to get the extra value from the Village Elder on the right being sacrificed to play the Deathwalker, and that immediately contests the Groundshaker. You
definitely value the Bone Collector, the 1/1 on the Bone Collector, more than one Faeria as a sack deck. But yeah, I preferred this land placement because it plays around Bombslinger on the Deathwalker, which we've already seen that Donpork is running Bombslinger, as you said. So this is just a bit better against Bombslinger, which is nice. Ooh, and next
very
turn.
Nice there. Ooh.
Next turn. Ooh. Well, next turn he
coming
still has...
one turn too late for Donpork there. That second one that he just drew would have been unbelievably good to kill off the Village Elders last turn, just like you were saying. But yeah, the Demon Wrangler there, even the Bloom Sprite, little Newbie set up to do a lot of interesting things on the upcoming turns.
Yeah, again, I think you value the 1/1 buff on the Bone Collector ahead of the extra Faeria if he doesn't Groundshaker this turn. So I think you would step the Elder towards the Bone Collector instead of going for that collection before you sack it. But that's only if he doesn't play the Groundshaker.
Donpork has a very interesting decision here. He could Groundshaker +1 and Flame Burst the Deathwalker, but I think it's so early to go for that clear. But does depend on what he thinks Little Newbie is running as the extra movement in this deck. Probably just goes for the single Groundshaker. Oh, does go for the Flame Burst play.
Flame Burst on Bone Collector, right? Ooh.
No, you kill off the Deathwalker. Groundshaker still contests the Bone Collector again next turn.
I think Bone Collector's green-yellow sack's only chance of winning this matchup, so I would always take out the Bone Collector there. For me. I value Bone Collector really highly in this matchup. If he grows to being huge, then that's probably one of the only ways that Sack can win, apart from getting one or two, probably 2 Soul Eaters very early on in the game. Is another way they can win. But Bone Collector is huge in this matchup. I think it has a lot more value than the Deathwalkers. So I prefer clearing the Bone Collector personally.
I think the way it was set up there, Donpork's playing for, I can kill the Deathwalker this turn with the Flame Burst, and the next turn I can play the Horsemaster in a position to go and kill the Bone Collector. We can see that Little Newbie is going to be able to possibly get some creatures in the right position to body block there, but I definitely think that's what Donpork was going for with the play that he made.
He doesn't have enough for Last Nightmare, right?
No, wouldn't have. He was 1 Faeria and 1 Desert short, so... So Sagami Warrior is not a bad one just because it is a free card off of the Bloom Sprite. 3/4, not necessarily a great stat line, but just to get a free creature, whether it ends up being something that contests something Donpork plays, or whether it ends up in a spot where you just sacrifice it as a free card. Not a bad one to get there. And now actually if Donpork goes for the Horsemaster play to kill off the Bone Collector, this Demon Wrangler is just going to kill it off.
Yeah.
And possibly get a Bone Collector for Little Newbie down next turn as well. So a very good response here by Little Newbie.
I really disagree with Donpork playing this matchup so slowly, going for the double collections. I think you really want to pressure the Sack player because the whole time the Soul Eaters are growing and growing and growing. If you give Sack player time, then you're just losing this game. I guess he must have some burn things in the deck, so maybe he's confident that stuff like what are they called? The 2/4s that deal damage every time an opponent's creature dies. Yeah. Maybe he thinks he can get enough value from them.
Bloodsingers are a fantastic one in this matchup. But Little Newbie is running a red-yellow that we would generally expect to be that burn. So I don't believe this deck runs a lot of those burn. It runs a little bit of the Ground Shakers to deal that extra little bit of damage. But I don't even know if it runs something like Cypher's Wrath just because it runs those Flame Bursts as well.
I would imagine it must run Cypher's Wrath. Like every single red control deck I've ever seen has had 3 Flame Bursts, 3 Cypher's Wrath.
I would definitely
imagine ever cutting it.
Very interesting that Little Newbie that Donpork didn't go for the kill onto the Bone Collector there. Again, like you said, playing very slowly in this matchup.
There's no clear with... No. I think
both players
maybe can just wait a turn. Here. Interesting. Is he going to step back with the 4/5 then?
Wow. So playing the Bone Collector just as a very hopeful, you can get the second one stacking early. This looks like it should be punished with Garridan by Donpork here.
Yeah. Garridan's going to be huge here. I'm not sure if I like the position of the Bone Collector. I'd either like it next to the other Bone Collector or on the left-hand side. In case he has the Cypher's Wrath for the Demon Wing. The Bone Collector can still collect next turn. But yeah, Garridan's going to be huge in this spot. And I'm not sure... I'm not sure if you even need to play Bone Collector in that... Yeah.
Yeah, the forest positioning there, it either looked like it was setting up for a possible Yak attack next turn, which means you would have kept the Faeria from playing Bone Collector anyway, or it was setting up to deny a Horsemaster charge from the Ground Shaker, which didn't look like it had a good clear there anyway. So it seemed like a very awkward Bone Collector placement, but Garridan going to come down here and be absolutely fantastic for Donpork.
Yeah, I think the green land that he played was just something that he can drop a Soul Eater on later on in the game. So he's just thinking 5 or 6 turns ahead. But I think now he's in a really bad position. And I'm really not understanding where the need for the Bone Collector was. Because he didn't even put it in a spot where it could collect. It was just kind of doing nothing, sitting in the middle. Maybe it would have got +1/+1 if his opponent had Ciphers, but just played completely into this Garridan. And that's a really huge punish, I have to say.
Yep, little newbie right now has to go for the last nightmare, I believe, onto Garridan. I don't really see an option where you don't kill that right now.
Yeah,
Just
last
try to
night.
reset in some way.
Oh, I'm really confused.
Okay, little newbie right now is just trying to basically squeeze the most value that he can out of everything that he can, and it's so hopeful that Donpork doesn't have an answer. It's just such passive play. Does eventually play the desert in the end. That seems very odd that you wouldn't go for the last nightmare there.
Well, he can just go for the last nightmare and then... Oh, I guess he's setting up for the yak attack and trying to bait out the trades with the Garridan and then get double, like two or three very strong buffs on both Bone Collectors. But again, you're playing into Firestorm now by not getting any pre-buffs on the second Bone Collector. And also, why not just set up the Sagami Warrior on the left so it can collect next turn?
Yeah, seemed very odd from Little Newbie. Again, going to be punished here. Garridan going to be able to kill the Bone Collector. Didn't have a lot of other options in hand for clearing out anything else first. Again, another Flame Burst would have been fantastic to kill off the 5-3, and then Garridan's in a position to just clean up everything. But, you know, now you've lost your biggest creature on board in that 5-3 Bone Collector. Your other one starts rolling, but is Garridan just at a 6-1 is not worth killing to the same extent that the last nightmare was. Just looked so good last turn.
You are getting some really good value from Yak Attack here, though. You can collect in 3 spots, I think. Sadly, you're not going to have enough to also win Soldier, but I think you have to Yak Attack here and just try and build up a decent-sized Bone Collector. So I guess you only get 3 buffs on the Bone Collector, so it's not going to be able to challenge the Ground Shaker like you would like.
Yeah, because even that Yak Attack doesn't kill off the Ground Shaker there.
No.
1, 2.
Well, maybe you can just Yak Attack and get 1 Yak on the Garridan and the other 2 on the Ground Shaker, and also collect. So yeah, trade the Sagami Warrior into the Ground Shaker, build the lands above it for Yak Attack. You're not going to be able to trade into the Silent, though, that way. But I think this is his best out.
Is there... Because you would move 1 Yak up to kill the Horsemaster. You would use the other one to kill Garridan here. Do you just leave your creatures set up as body blocking against the Ground Shaker?
Could do, because this way you can play around... Yeah, this is really nice. This is a really good play.
Yeah, so this actually sets up...
Not even worried about Bombslinger.
Yeah, so the Ground Shaker is in a position where if it kills the Yak this turn, the Bone Collector will be able to kill it off next turn. If it kills the Sagami Warrior, Wind Soldier in hand for Little Newbie is going to be able to play it off. So this time his passive play may be rewarded. Ground Shaker Flamespitter could kill off the Yak there while also dealing a lot of extra damage, but this is, again, without quite the good answers in hand to take care of something very efficiently, this is a spot where Little Newbie possibly gets back into the game a little bit.
I really want to see Donpork draw for Flame Burst here. If he hits Flame Burst, he has Flame Burst and Flame Spitter to deal with the 3-4, and then he can Cobble Barracks to take out the Bone Collector, and then he's in a really, really dominating spot.
Yeah, and the Kobold Barracks will be in a spot where... Oh, it actually does run Bloodsingers in here like you were discussing earlier, so very interesting. That'll definitely come down. Yeah, it does come down right now.
So, yeah, takes out... Yeah,
Should
I like
go for
taking
Barracks
out...
here.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, so like I was saying, if the Ground Shaker killed the Yak, the Bone Collector would be in a position to kill it off, but the Barracks actually allows the Ground Shaker to survive that, so... Soldier...
You really want to win +1 for Last Nightmare, I think.
1, 2... Yeah, I think Last Nightmare onto this Ground Shaker is really strong right now.
And you can step up and get the buff on the Bone Collector as well. And you probably move the Sagami to double collect.
Yeah, because you could use the Sagami and Wind Soldier and take an inefficient clear at the Ground Shaker. Your Bone Collector gets very buffed from that play.
And
but
Donpork, you get 2 damage. Oh, he doesn't do it. So he's drawing for Soul Eater, which is understandable. I just think Last Nightmare was such good value, and this trade is kind of pretty awkward as well. So he doesn't even get out the... Yeah, there's a lot of awkward things about this. I prefer the Last Nightmare, but I don't mind this. It's still okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily mind him keeping the Last Nightmare just because he knows that Cypher is in Donpork's deck, or it possibly represents the next big swing against a Ground Shaker. So I understand him keeping it, but that definitely looked like a position where he could have used it. Or the +1 and get the Fanatic down, so the Bone Collector was a little more pushed up, killed off the Barracks, contested anything on that spot. But again, that does put it into mountain range, so maybe you play into Bombslinger and some other form of clear. So, and again, I understand drawing when you're going for a Soul Eater play there.
Yeah, I think Newbie's just decided that he's going to draw every turn now, unless he absolutely desperately has to do something different, because the Soul Eaters are just going to win him the game from this point. Like we talked about, Donpork's played this really slowly. Newbie's still at 15 life. I really would have preferred, like even right from the off, the Ground Shakers to come up much more aggressively and just play down one side rather than go for the second collection on the side that Newbie isn't really contesting. I think it's a stronger way to play the matchup, but maybe he was just waiting for the Bloodsingers. I can completely appreciate that. I'm thinking he's got enough burn in the deck to win this.
Yeah, Bloodsinger is something that you would want down as early as possible against the sacrifice decks, just because they're going to want to kill off their own creatures as much as you want them to kill off their own creatures. So there is the Soul Eater. Unfortunately, right now the Soul Eater...
We don't see the buffs.
Yeah, so it looks like they've just done, whatever it was that caused the spectator bug has been reverted now, but that means we don't see either the discounts or the buffs until that card is actually played. And here we do see the Cypher come down and actually set up exactly what I was discussing on that last turn there with the Last Nightmare to kill it off very efficiently.
Ooh, has he got enough now?
Or I don't think so, because your possible clear of it would be Bombslinger, Barracks, Flamespitter.
If you Bombslinger first and then Flamespitter, you don't have enough, right? Yeah, it's not enough.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite enough.
Probably set up the mountain.
9, yeah. You'd need 10 Faeria to do that.
I like setting the mountain up as aggressively as possible. You have to switch, switch modes at this stage. Maybe he'll even just play Bombslinger this turn.
Now in a very odd position. Again, these Ground Shakers are basically the biggest creature in the deck for Donpork, and having that one sit up in the left corner it's just been delaying for so long.
I think he plays Barracks as well, and now the Bombslinger's a 6/1 if he plays the Barracks next to it, and that is okay. He doesn't do it. That's really surprising.
Because could have gone for the Barracks there, which means the Bone Collector either dies trading in the Bombslinger, or it delays that you have to kill the Barracks first, and that would have allowed Flamespitter or Ground Shaker to deal that 1 extra damage there.
And it denies a collection. I think, it looks like he's going to take out the Bloodsinger.
Very strong play here.
Yeah. This is his biggest threat right now. So now Newbie has a 8/4 it's going to be in his opponent's phase. The Bombslinger's just come out, and he's got a Soul Eater in hand.
Yeah, Soul Eater, I mean, again, we can't see the buff. It's probably at least like 13, 14 right now, something
Yeah.
in that range, just because there has been a lot of creatures died. Again, Garridan
Even the
got some
Yak
good
attack.
value. Yeah, the Yak attack as well. I didn't consider that one, so it may be even bigger. I was just thinking early, the 3 village elders died, 2 bone collectors. Or no, sorry, just the 1 bone collector died, but Demon Wing, the Demon Wrangler that was early, the Deathwalker,
Yeah.
and then that Yak attack as well. This Soul Eater is going to be very big. Little Newbie in a position where, oh, that's a fantastic draw with the Horsemaster.
Yeah, that's
Was
what
going to
he
say
needed.
the Bone Collector in a threatening enough position that it possibly forces Donpork to inefficiently clear it, and then you play your Soul Eater again next turn. But that Horsemaster is going to allow this Bomb Slinger to come back defensive to clear the Bone Collector. Should set up into double collection, which requires the Fanatic to deal with it. But I have no idea right now how Donpork's going to deal with this Soul Eater.
He's trying to decide where to play it. I don't like playing it in between the two anyway, because it just dies for free to the... Unless he's going to... He has enough for double Flame Spitter on the... Okay, this makes sense.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I think the best position for it was on the mountain that you needed to move the Bomb Slinger to. Just because that meant that if the Fanatic wanted to clear it, it had to jump into a spot where it wouldn't collect any Faeria.
Yeah, he just double Flame
He's going to double
Spitters,
Flame Spitter, okay.
so it's okay. But we're just going to see Soul Eater come down, I think, and he'll probably just draw cards, because all he needs now is to find his Soul Eaters, and Donpork might be able to deal with one. He's not going to be able to deal with all 3. Newbie's already down to 13 cards, so every turn he has, what, a 1 in 6... Is it 1 in 6 chance to draw a Soul Eater? No, 1 in 3 chance to draw a Soul Eater. Based on 2 draws per turn. So yeah, I like just drawing every single time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Little Newbie last turn went for a plus. I was just checking through there. Went for a +1 Faeria when he had his Bone Collector in a position where he could have got a land down directly in front of Donpork's Orb. Now this Soul Eater is going to come down. Again, that is a
Probably
spectator
not
bug.
a
We
3/3.
actually, yeah, that's just the buff that it's got in hand. But again, something like we're expecting it to be, I don't know, 15, 16, maybe even higher than that. But it could be directly in front of the orb right now. It's just kind of an odd way that it's played out with that 1 extra Faeria that Little Newbie ended up not needing in that spot.
Yeah, I really prefer playing it on the left-hand side where it can double collect, and then next turn it can hit the orb. This way he's really playing into Cobbled Barracks, I would say. And he knows his opponent runs Cobbled Barracks.
Yeah, Barracks on the mountain in between the Silent Horsemaster and the Flame Spitter represents 6 extra damage between these creatures. They can do 13 to this Soul Eater. Again, unsure if that's enough, but it at least represents a lot of damage right now.
So he's trying to set up lethal with Soul Drain on the Flame Spitter, but I just think it's kind of... There's no hurry for him. He's still at 15 life. He doesn't need to set up lethal for next turn. He can just happily double collect with the 3/3 and keep it, or with the Soul Eater, and just keep it safe and set up lethal for future turns. There's more Soul Eaters coming down anyway. Barracks.
The Barracks is going to come down just as a body block everything. The Brigand will come down directly behind the Flame Spitter just to ensure that that Soul Drain play isn't something that Little Newbie can go for. We have seen 1 Fanatic, so a second Fanatic here would be unbelievable to get this Soul Eater into the right position.
Or... No, there's no way you can get a Wind Soldier lethal now, right?
No, he'd be 1... Yeah, 1 off. 1 Faeria off, I believe. There is the Fanatic.
So now we'll see how big this Soul Eater is. So if he's got lethal, then... Okay, so he just goes to Soul Drain. I like just moving... Okay, he's going to take out that.
It was at minus 13 there, so this is a... it'd be 17 Soul Eater
17,
right now.
17, right.
Yeah. because Kobold Barracks has 4 life, and it went down to -13 there. So again, Donpork is going to set up just to basically body block the Soul Eater, but very nicely done to kill off the Kobold Barracks, remove a lot of that damage, and like you're saying, yes, there's a possibility that this one Soul Eater gets not even dealt with, but just body blocked enough that it can't do a lot, but there is the second one, and that's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, you just trade and then body block with the second one, I think. Again, the longer this game goes on, the more you're going to win. Oh, he just trades with the ground shaker, that's fine too. The -3 health, Soul Eater. Yeah, again, I would have preferred to just see the stats come on board. You're not really in a hurry to deal with the ground shaker, but not a bad
follow-up here for Donpork now.
Yeah.
Cypher's Wrath onto the Fanatic on the left. You get a big Axe Grinder there. Again, it's a couple turns away. So this will push the Soul Eater to an 18. Is there a way that you can generate 2 extra damage this turn to find lethal with 2 Demon Wranglers in hand?
I think you just play the second Soul Drain as aggressively as possible. The second Soul Eater as aggressively as possible. And then worry about that next turn.
Well, the 2 Demon Wranglers and the Shaitan Assassin represent 3 creatures that can come down onto the board, and 2 of them die in the process. So I think that should give you the lethal.
You don't have enough. You can't move.
Oh, it's not in the position. Right. Soul Eater's not in the position to actually hit face right now.
Yep.
So yes, yeah, you could just kill off Axe Grinder, play the Soul Eater.
I think you just play the second Soul Eater.
I don't see a reason not to. I'm even playing those small creatures out as your sacrifice to play more creatures onto the board really doesn't accomplish anything right now. Getting the second Soul Eater down in a position where you can guarantee one of them hits the orb next turn for lethal just seems so much better.
Getting an 18/18 on board for 5 seems good.
Yeah.
with flying and charge 3, I don't see.
Yeah, and the Soul Drain doesn't accomplish anything. The Soul Drain could kill off the Flame Spitter, but Donpork's in a position where he's going to collect from both of those wells anyway, so not really a reason to go for that.
I think he's trying to set up some lethal for next turn with his current Soul Eater, but it's just going to get blocked. Oh, he's lost connection. What?
That's disappointing to see.
If he gets back in, he should still... He's still in a position where...
Yeah, he's still in a position where he can set up the sacrifices to generate lethal next turn, but it would have been guaranteed with the second Soul Eater down. Still, in the spot that it's in, the only way Donpork denies the lethal is placing a mountain directly in front of his orb and playing the Bloodsinger that he just drew. Other than that, he's not going to be able to body block, but... Yeah, unfortunate there that Little Newbie disconnected and ran out of time right at the end of his turn, so...
I guess he was just trying to set up that lethal there. Is there any chance Donpork can race?
I don't believe so. If that Axe Grinder was in the lower position, that mountain was like 1 space lower where Little Newbie's desert is, and you're 1 space away from the orb, maybe. But... See, this is so unfortunate for Little Newbie. If he had been able to get that second Soul Eater down, he would have moved the one that's already on board to kill the Underground Brigand there, and the second one wouldn't have been body blocked. So, just unfortunate positioning here.
So the Soul Eater, I can't remember how big it is. I think it's got like 14 health or something. Okay, so it just trades. Probably just play the second Soul Eater.
I think it's at 11 currently, because it was an 18. I think. So, again, I'm not sure exactly how that spectator bug is affecting it right now, but...
Oh, Gaia's Grace is an excellent... This is probably the one occasion where that's exactly the card that you want to see from the Bloom Sprite. You just buff up one of the Soul Eaters. Oh, wow. That's the one.
The Demon Wrangler, interesting. 2, 4. I don't think he was in a position where he was really concerned about his life total. Even this Cypher's Wrath killing off the Demon Wing and the Flame Spitter killing off the Demon Wrangler was only 4 extra damage. That puts you to 11, so you're still not in a position where you're overly concerned here.
I would always stick it on one of the Soul Eaters. Just make sure that they're surviving.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like the spot to do that in. Both Soul Eaters, again, got another +1, so I think they're only 1 creature off from representing a 1-hit lethal. But Donpork won't be able to move any of his creatures. I believe so, yes.
So now we can't even trade off the Demon Wrangler to guarantee lethal, right? Because he buffed it up. I mean, I guess he can sack something, but...
Yeah, he's got enough sacrifice cards in hand. The Flame Spitter is going to have to move over in front of the Underground Brigand just to guarantee that the Soul Eaters don't do anything tricky there, but that Soul Drain in Little Newbie's hand is going to be able to kill it off, so...
I think he plays the Brigand behind the current Brigand, and he's looking at Bombslinger on the 2/4. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Brigand does come down in exactly that spot, like you were saying. So this... I don't see a reason to move that one. You could move it up 1 space, I guess, but that doesn't really accomplish a lot. Just does limit the positioning there. And the Wind Soldier doesn't have a good line.
It's lethal, right? If he steps down with the Demon Wrangler, hits the Wind Soldier to run into this Brigand, the Soul Eater on the right hits into the Bloodsinger, and then the Soul Eater hits face for what we think is 20.
Yeah, there was a couple ways to do it. Charge 3 on the Wind Soldier would have been the first Soul Eater. No, you couldn't have got that one in. Sorry. Yeah, the way that you had it was, I believe, the only way to set it up.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter at this stage. I mean, I can't see Donpork winning this. If Newbie was at like 7 or 8 life, then it's a game. But at this point, yeah.
Yeah, another Flame Burst picked up. Yeah, that Flame Burst Cypher's Wrath in hand could actually represent a big chunk of burst if Little Newbie was lower. But again, that Gaia's Grace able to keep him up. A second Flame Burst picked up as well. This, if it was a little closer, like you had said about, do you go for the race there? That Axe Grinder possibly was in a position where it could have gone for a race.
Yeah, well, I assume Donpork knows that he still had... Ooh.
So that actually was able to kill it off.
Okay, but now surely he sees... Assuming that this is 20 attack, which it must be, the Wind Soldier into the Brigand, and then...
Yeah, Wind Soldier directly in front to kill off the Brigand there. Will allow the Soul Eater the attack, and we will see what it's at. But I believe, yeah, that's 22 possibly. Yeah 22
nice.
So yeah, kind of an awkward game from both players there. Seemed like Donpork was playing possibly slower than he necessarily needed to in the early game, and Little Newbie kind of responded by waiting for his moment as well, and then played really slowly once he got the Soul Eaters out. Ended up working out in the end for Little Newbie there and taking the game.
I think Donpork didn't draw the burn elements of his deck as early as he would have liked.
Yeah, they were definitely could have been more impactful early.
Maybe that's the way that he likes playing the matchup, which is completely reasonable when you're red control. But if you don't draw those burn elements, then maybe at some point you have to switch tack and start to go more aggressive, so you don't just wait for the Soul Eater scaling.
I think when I can come back to that game as well, it was pretty unfortunate from the side of Donpork that Little Newbie was getting all his 3 Bone Collectors pretty early.
Yeah.
And getting 2 of them decently big, at least. So that took out a lot of tempo out of the game as well. And as you were saying, he was just not drawing his Flame Burst as well. He had double Flame Burst and the Cyphers at the end of the game on his hand.
Well, he got the 1 early, and that's possibly another spot that swings the game. He got that 1 Flame Burst early and used it and the Ground Shaker to take out the Deathwalker instead of the Bone Collector, like you were saying, Salugi. And that Bone Collector eventually became like an 8/4 or something. So
I think he traded into that one with the Garadan. when it was like
yes, you're
5-3.
right. It was the other one. That,
But if Newbie had used the Last Nightmare on the Garadan instead, then that Bone Collector could definitely have grown much bigger.
Yeah, so a few awkward plays in the early game there.
Yeah, and he like having a ground shaker on the collection side is probably not the thing you want to have.
Yeah, that's also true.
The deck is running X grinders as well. You have a lot of combat value with the Cobalt Barracks on a lot of small minions, pimping these Blood Singers and Brigands to 4 attack, or the X grinders to 6-7 attack. So probably going up a lane against Zag and pressuring the one side is probably the way to go in this matchup.
Yeah, but it's definitely a spot where you'd rather a Blood Singer or a Flame Spitter, if you got a good ping onto something, to be that one setting up on your far side collection, so that your second Ground Shaker could be actually in the fight instead of just sitting doing nothing the whole game.
Yeah, I think like the key card in that matchup is definitely going to be the Bloodsinger from the red side. So the fact I don't think he drew 1 in the first 15 cards. So I think that really impacted on the matchup, but he could have played it a little bit more aggressively based on his hand.
So I told the players that we go on a 5-minute break to keep some rest, to drink something, so you can relax for a moment as well.
Great.
So I hope you appreciate this. So I will go
thanks a lot.
go on to the pause screen. We will be back in about 5 minutes with the rest of the series.
Great.
So welcome back, everybody. We are in the middle of the series after a short break. Little Newbie leading 3-2 against Donpork. Donpork chose red-yellow as the next deck for Little Newbie and has to stick with his red deck. So we will see red from Donpork against red-yellow from Little Newbie.
I think that's what I was expecting, just because I don't think, if the green-blue is similar to the Apex that Little Newbie ran in last week's King of the Hill, I really don't know how that red deck beats it unless it gets the perfect start. But we will see the red-yellow. Little Newbie looking in a good position to have another strong deck as his last one, like we were talking about.
This is the first time either player has made a choice and they've actually still gone on to lose the game, I believe. So Donpork's now lost 2 games with his red deck against the mono green and the green yellow sack. So that's kind of when you're starting to get worried about a deck, because your number one choice, it didn't work out. So now you have to hope that you win against the second choice, which might not even be a particularly good matchup.
Yeah, and sometimes whether it is that the matchup is unfavored, so you were hoping to win a more favored one than this one, sometimes that just plays into your mental state as well when you lose a game that you were hoping to win. Sometimes it's not necessarily even about favored or unfavored in that matchup. It's more of the way that you approach it because you just lost the one that you were really hoping to win. So we actually do see the what's referred to as the angry deck here from Little Newbie. Red, yellow, a lot of the more attack than life synergy. And I believe when the Nat dies, the hate seed gets discounted. So again, that is a oh no, that wouldn't be the spectator bug. That was actually the Demon Wing getting down, double buffed. They're double discounted the hate seed there.
Yeah.
So we can already see how quickly that hate seed got discounted. Also have to consider that does exactly the same as the Soul Eaters happened to last game to the Firebringers here from Little Newbie. So the longer the game goes, the more and more Donpork is going to struggle to keep up with these big cards.
And the more time that Nat dies, it's going to keep getting buffed and buffed and buffed. So I kind of expect that we see 3 Firebringers in this deck and presumably 3 hate seeds, but I think the Firebringers are really going to be huge, particularly in this matchup.
Yeah, Firebringers are the very, very strong ones of the match. Should point out a very good start from Little Newbie here, that he can commit to his deserts before he goes into his mountains, which is really what you want to do, because those are the cards that really accelerate your mountain creatures.
One thing to note is if Donpork does actually manage to draw his Bloodsingers this time round, he's going to have so many ways of dealing damage to this annoying Nat. Little Newbie probably isn't running any health buffs in the deck, So it's probably going to be a case of, can he survive? Maybe he runs Healing Song. And he notices this already by sacrificing the 2/1 rather than the Wrangler.
Yeah, already, even at this point at 18 life so early into the game, respecting that if that Nat dies too many times, he's going to be in a really bad spot. Also was in a spot there with the Demon Wrangler, where the Underground Brigand could have stepped up and got quite a bit of value off of that attack as well. Donpork without really a good follow-up here. He can play the Flame Spitter to kill off the annoying Nat, but really would rather that be more of a ground shaker play so that you can set up into something else. But is going to have a good follow-up with the Bomb Slinger to kill off the Deathwalker, but at least for this turn, really doesn't have anything good to play.
He goes for double collection, and then he's kind of setting up the Bomb Slinger on the 6/4 next turn, or indeed the Cobble Barracks if he chooses to do that. But the Barracks, well, let's see what Newbie's land placement is like. He can't play around Bomb Slinger, but he can kind of make it inconvenient and force Donpork to build on his own land, which isn't really what he wants to do.
I love the early Hellfire here. Not only denying that collection, denying the combat from the Underground Brigand, also pushing that orb damage, although it is very early again. Absolutely love going for the early one there. We are going to see the Bomb Slinger come down.
Ooh.
Yeah, great answers here.
I was just thinking he can play Ground Shaker and Flame Burst and Flame Spitter, so the only thing left on the board for Little Newbie would be the Nat, and rather than setting up a Bomb Slinger right where it's going to be taken out by the Nat, unless he gets good RNG, which he should. But getting down an aggressive Ground Shaker when your opponent has no answer in hand and 0 Faeria, that could have been what won him the game there. So personally, I prefer that play to the one that he chose, but maybe this is still okay.
The way he's kind of cycling over his cards right now, I think he's reconsidering his options as well. He, immediately saw how good the Bomb Slinger was going to be to kill off the Deathwalker and went for that so quickly. And then now looks like he's almost reconsidering it because this Flame Spitter going to kill off the demon, or going to need to do that 1 damage to the Demon Wing so that the Ground Shaker can kill it off next turn. But that means that the Nat gets this great trade, and that really seemed like Donpork almost made that decision too quickly.
Yeah, there's still going to be some value from Ground Shaker next turn, but I think this Hate Seed is going to be huge in consolidating the board for Little Newbie, whereas if he played the Ground Shaker, then he can't really play the Hate Seed on the right-hand side. So it would have been a lot more difficult for him to kind of gain control of that side.
Yeah, unfortunate to draw the Wind Soldier there and not have a good line to attack into the Flame Spitter. We actually do see the Healing Song, like you mentioned earlier in the game there, so is going to be able to keep Little Newbie alive as the game goes on, but not quite one.
It's interesting that he chose to start with a desert in front of the orb rather than to the side, because if he'd started to the side, now he would have had the line for Wind Soldier to push forward and actually take that trade, whereas it's not available for him. It wasn't available for him last turn. So yeah, that's possibly not knowing the deck so well, but you almost always want to have a desert next to one of your own wells, just for Wind Soldier at any point later on in the game.
Yeah, it's a very strong position to set up. We do see Donpork. I was going to say he's going to go for the +1 Faeria there, but I wasn't sure if he was going to Flame Burst the Hate Seed to kill it off, or if he was going to play the Axe Grinder, and then if that Axe Grinder was going to come down defensive or aggressive, because with the way that Nat spawned, Little Newbie's actually in a position to push some orb damage, and Donpork's been burning down as well, down to 14 currently.
Yeah, so he can actually... Little Newbie can just clear the board now. With setting up a desert aggressively now, trade the Wind Soldier into the Axe Grinder, trade everything else into the Ground Shaker. And then I guess he can play... Does he want a Healing Song yet? Probably not. So I guess he would just play a Fanatic and set it up in a position where it can double collect.
Currently on 7. He actually could go Desert in the spot between all the ground shaker, the axe grinder there. Move the annoying gnat onto that space. Fanatic. No, actually, he doesn't have quite enough for all of that. I was going to say Fanatic and then Wind Soldier to kill off the axe grinder, because your Fanatic allows the annoying gnat to go aggressive, but then you can't last nightmare the ground shaker, and then you lose out a little bit anyway. So.
Oh, so he's just last nightmaring the ground shaker, but then he doesn't have enough for Wind Soldier.
Yeah,
I think
very.
The full clear was like it just lined up so perfectly. I think I prefer doing that, but this way at least, like the axe grinder's doing nothing. It's not going to collect. He must have soul drains in the deck, so he's got a few draws for the soul drain next turn, particularly with the healing song. I think he's still in an alright spot.
Yeah, you just end up with a more inefficient clear when you could have got a very efficient one last turn.
The Fanatic's actually going to allow him to trade into the axe grinder next turn.
That is true. Yeah, but right now, sitting on very low Faeria, we have to see this healing song come out from Little Newbie as well.
Yeah, I think the healing song also gives him a chance to draw into Firebringer, which is really what he's looking for. So I definitely like to see
very good point. Yeah,
the healing song first, and then we'll see what he does.
Unfortunate to not draw into them here. Another thing, Little Newbie definitely wanted to go for the healing song instead of the power wheel draw one first. Just because if you did draw into your Firebringer, you could have placed a mountain directly in front of your opponent's orb. I think that was a very strong positioning.
I think he's not going for the healing song. He just wants to clear the board with Wind Soldier. No. Okay.
Okay. So just another kind of awkward setup there. Get the point accomplished in the end, but somewhat awkward there again from Little Newbie, just the ordering. But definitely needed to go for the healing song, just because sitting on 7, you're very close to dead.
But he knows that his opponent can't deal 7 to him that turn with only 3 Faeria, so he could potentially have waited 1 extra turn if he wanted to. I think it depended more on whether you want the draw now or whether you want it later. If he had the Wind Soldier's potentially... Oh, with the Wind Soldier, his opponent goes up to 5 because of the combat, and then he'd be at 6. Still wouldn't be enough to kill him, so maybe he could have been greedy and waited a turn.
Very nice move by Donpork there to play the double prairie, exactly like what I was talking about. Little Newbie could have got a land into a good position there. Unfortunately, unable to get that mountain right in front of his opponent's orb. He'll need to look for another angle, either to get a creature onto one of those spaces so he can get the mountain down on the left side. Otherwise, Donpork's just going to completely clean it up.
Yeah, he has the Fanatic, so he should be able to get a decent mountain near his opponent's orb at some point in the future. Just by using the Fanatic on anything that's around, but he hasn't managed to find a Firebringer yet. Once he finds a Firebringer, I think he's in a good spot, but right now, I think it's pretty close. I assume Cypher's going to come down next turn?
Yes, Cypher possibly represents a little bit of a way for Donpork to come back. I think Ground Shaker is the big one right now. If you're able to get a Ground Shaker down, it's unbelievable amount of value, especially if this Demon Wrangler comes down from Little Newbie. But I think he's in enough of a position where he doesn't really need to force any more creatures onto the board, just because that burn damage is should be playing in the back of his mind. But
ooh. He sacks the Gnat. That's
actually gets a good movement from the Gnat as well from that. And there is the Ground Shaker. So Deathwalker sets up to play around either Cypher or Ground Shaker coming down as the only way that Donpork can come back in this matchup. But that Ground Shaker still represents a very good swing, even if the Deathwalker just trades into it.
If the Deathwalker trades in... Well... Newbie is still collecting if he plays Ground Shaker. So the Ground Shaker is more for the body than the actual... I think Donpork has to draw, because allowing double collection... If you play Ground Shaker and double collect here, and Newbie double collects, it doesn't really do that much in terms of the board. It just saves them 5 damage, and he could... potentially have Ground Shaker plus Flame Burst last turn and just allow the additional 6 damage to face. I think I'd rather have the 6 damage to face and get a much cleaner trade on the Deathwalker here.
Yeah, and we actually see, based on the way that Little Newbie's creatures, like you said, continue to double collect with this Fanatic, the Fanatic in hand and the Wind Soldier is going to allow a much more efficient clear than the Deathwalker, unless Little Newbie decides to go for a Mountain and play the Shed and Pest down right now and just represent possibly lethal next turn. 6 to the face here, like the Nat moves up. Yeah, so this sets up not a guaranteed, but an almost guaranteed lethal for next turn, especially with the Fanatic in range as well. With the Shed and Pest being unable to be cleared on this upcoming turn, and then either the Nat or the Fanatic being in a position to end the game with the extra bit of damage, or possibly just the Wind Soldier thanks to that aggressive Desert. So a lot of options set up here for Little Newbie. And
he wants to draw. He can't draw. If he top decked Cypher's Wrath, it was lethal. By playing Cypher's Wrath on the Nat and then Flame Burst face, because he would have been able to push
2,
on
4, 7. Yep.
Maybe he can +1. I think he has to draw because he's dead next turn anyway, right? Oh,
4,
I guess he
5.
can Flame Burst and trade in. I think drawing is best.
You can also play the Kobold Barracks just as a block on the Shed and Pest, at least for this turn, but that requires you to play the Flame Burst on the Deathwalker. Move the Ground Shaker over and kill off the Fanatic, +1. You'd Flame Burst the Deathwalker, Kobold Barracks directly in front of the Shed and Pest, just to block for this turn. But then you're really limiting your outs for finding lethal on your next
any
turn.
Lethal if he draws Cypher's Wrath, and the Nat spawns next to Ground Shaker,
2,
he's
4,
only down
6.
to 1. So I think this is his best chance. Still, I guess he's probably still absorbing 6 damage to face, right? Okay, so
no, this actually is lethal still. Very nice movement with the Fanatic and the Wind Soldier here. Picks up Little Newbie the game, and he will put himself on match point.
Donpork really struggling to find a win with this red deck.
Yeah, the red deck has a lot of great control tools in it, ability to get a lot of valuable trades, but unfortunately if you draw into them in an awkward way, or you don't get basically the max value out of every creature, the deck really struggles to keep up in terms of the amount of pressure that it can put onto the board and onto your opponent.
Well, I actually think the Bomb Slinger turn was pretty much a key turn, because, as you said, he could have full cleared the board on this turn, but went for the very fast Bomb Slinger, and then recognized, oh, I could have maybe did something different to clear the board. Have the problem was he never had kind of a creature in an aggressive spot to draw into Horsemaster to hit the face for like additional 5 damage. They could have won the game.
Yeah, so one of the big things with a deck like that, and with not necessarily burn specifically, but just a deck that has some burn characteristics, if you can get one attack onto the orb, it is such a monumental swing in the game, just in the amount of pressure that your opponent is going to be under.
I think just also if you've got the option of dropping a 5/6 for 6 or a 4/1 for 5, the 5/6 has just got so much more board presence. You want to drop that as early as possible, consolidate the board, and then use the Bomb Slinger to deny your opponent getting back onto the board with something like a second Deathwalker.
Yeah, that definitely seemed like a massive swing turn. Just because, and then kind of like I said it afterwards, he needed to then use the Flame Spitter to kill off the Nat so he could keep his Bomb Slinger alive, but you needed the Flame Spitter to deal that 1 damage to the Demon Wing so that your Ground Shaker cleared up the Demon Wing and your opponent wasn't double collecting on the other side. It just ended up being, he looked at the value of the Bomb Slinger and then realized how much more value he could have got if he actually thought through the other ways that he could have cleared up that turn. So
he did have really unfortunate draws. I just want to say he had really unfortunate draws, not getting the Bloodsinger, not getting the Cypher's Wrath if they're in the deck. It was unfortunate.
Yes, they are. I know it.
They are. So, yeah.
So, yeah, Little Newbie onto his final deck here, the Green-Blue Apex. We saw him run very well last week. Now, it was running libraries in it last week, and you actually got a great clear on them, Salugi, with the Ground Shaker. So that's possibly something that could be a factor again in this match, but we do see, these Sturdy Shells, Living Willows be very strong in this deck with the Gabriel Enchantment that's going to come down, possibly the Enchantress, but it's a very strong deck, and just like we said in the previous 2 games, Red really struggles to deal with the giant creatures, and not only are each of your smaller creatures in the beginning going to be big enough to be difficult to deal with just because of the enchantment, as soon as those Apex comes down, it's going to be very difficult for Red to deal with those.
I think if Donpork plays it the same way as he's played the last 2 games, where he's been fairly defensive and tried to collect his own 2 wells, maybe not so much last game, but certainly the SAT game, he doesn't really stand a chance. He really needs to push forward down one side and put as much pressure on with this Ground Shaker as he can.
Second Sturdy Shell is very good here for a Little Newbie. He's going to be in a good position to just collect so much Faeria over the next few turns.
I really like double Prairie this turn and then Ground Shaker next turn, I think. He's going defensively. I guess it's okay with the Bloodsinger.
Yeah.
But I think it's just too slow in this matchup where you really need to get aggressive and put pressure on and not give them all the time in the world to get out their Apex Predators.
Yeah, the Ground Shaker, again, we don't want to see be that defensive option, just sitting up in the left corner and doing nothing all game. So I definitely want to see Donpork go more aggressive and establish double control on this side. Doesn't even necessarily need to set up on that top well, but again, Bloodsinger can be in a very good position just sitting there. Little Newbie in a position right now where that Living Willow probably comes down. You don't want to play the Flower Silk Fairy just because you have no way to generate more card draw this turn. If he had an enchantment in hand, you go Living Willow, play the Fairy, and play the enchantment. But without that as an option, yeah, we're just going to see the Willow pass.
Probably setting up for... If he draws enchantment, then he's got a Huntmaster play to remove the Bloodsinger. And then... Yeah, I think the Bloodsinger is one of the strongest cards in this red deck. So if he can get a clear on that and get all the play to be on this left-hand side, it's tough to see how Donpork wins this. But Cypher is going to be really huge. I was
going to say there, as much as the Ground Shaker does get a good chunk of value because it knocks 3 life off of 3 very important enchantment creatures, Cypher, if you get that early snowball going, can be very strong in this matchup. If you get him bigger than what the Apex are going to eventually be, we're going to see it come down. And again, I don't know, but I don't believe that this deck runs anything like a Frogify or Humbling Vision to bring down the life or the debuff your opponent's creatures. But
yeah, I assume that we're going to see Flower Silk Fairy into Earthcraft first, and then maybe he's going to try and draw into an enchantment.
It does look like it would be a very strong play getting that Fairy down. Even if you go double Prairie again towards the Bloodsinger and move with your Willow first so that you can play the Huntmaster afterwards, it still does exactly the same thing if you do draw into that enchantment.
So if he plays the Fairy here, gets the buff, he can actually move the Sturdy Shell up and left, and now the Sturdy Shell is safe from the Cypher. If the Cypher kills the Fairy, it's only going to be a +1/+1 because it's the original stats. I was just going to feed the 0/4 anyway, which is fine.
And a very nice play there to continue to block.
Yeah.
Oh, we should see Enchantment and Huntmaster right now to kill off Cypher with the Living Willow. Very strong swing here by Little Newbie, getting basically exactly the cards that he needed in exactly the order that he wanted. Donpork going to have a good follow-up. The Flame Spitter and Cypher's Wrath can kill off this 9/4, and that removes a big option, a big threat right now. Little Newbie also left his lands in kind of an awkward position where you could get a very aggressive Axe Grinder down right now.
You can get an Axe Grinder. You can also use the Cobbled Barracks instead of the Cypher's Wrath. I think because you've got this opportunity to use it now, you might want to play it. Alternatively, you might want to save it for later on when it might be your only way of ever dealing with an Apex. So I'm actually interested to see which one he'll choose to value higher in this spot. Maybe it's just the Cypher's Wrath.
Yeah, and another point of that is you do have the Bloodsinger down right now, so that extra damage whenever you can kill something off is very impactful at this stage of the game if you think that your Bloodsinger is going to be contested. Again, with the power level that Little Newbie has potentially on the left side here, depending on what he draws into. But yeah, the Kobold Barracks also represents 2 extra damage if you get this Axe Grinder to push some orb damage as well. So I like the Ciphers there. And again, if you had played the Kobold Barracks, it's in a spot where your follow-up is away from the barracks, so it doesn't represent multiple turns of impact. It was just that one spot. So I don't believe. Oh, okay, does actually go for the Ground Shaker. I was gonna say I don't believe he'll commit enough to play the Ground Shaker as well, but does go for it. So
I think he's in a spot where he has to. And I was just wondering this, whether he's still playing the Tiki Healers.
This is very interesting, to see.
He was last week, so I assume he's still playing Libraries as well. And there's the Apex. And the 5/6 is possibly a good enough target to go for on this Apex. And with the Huntmaster in hand, he can just play Apex defensively and then use it next turn for a good trade. But with
Apex,
Tiki Healers.
Apex is very strong when you can get it onto one of your giant buffed creatures, but when you're able to take something like a Ground Shaker stats from your opponent and just make it an 8/9, very strong in that way as well. But yeah, Tiki Healer, a very interesting one because it does give you that extra life against your, burning yourself down from the libraries. It's also a very good Feed the Forest target.
And an enchantment target as well.
Yeah, that's true as well. It goes up to a 6/6 with the enchantment.
So yeah, it's really nice in this kind of deck. Do you think he'll use the Huntmaster to go face with the Apex, or do you think he'll use it to trade in with possibly the Ground Shaker?
At an 8/9, I don't think you're as likely to push the orb damage, just because that's still a 3-turn clock. If it was something that's got at least 10 attack and you can put your opponent on a 2-turn clock, I think you definitely go for that. Bloodsinger in a good spot here to clean up the Fairy, so possibly the Fairy could have been your extra 2 damage or 4 damage over the course of 2 turns. So I think it depends on what Little Newbie draws. If he draws into another Apex, I think you go for the clears. If you draw into kind of garbage, then maybe you put your opponent on a clock there.
I don't like playing the Barracks here. I guess he wants to defend against it, but
the Barracks is played right now to get the most potential off of this Apex clearing your creatures, but I would have liked to see him hold on to that to represent more orb damage when he's pushed into that aggressive spot.
I mean, right now he has to play. Or can he just win the race with Tiki Healer?
He possibly can, and especially with that Kobold Barracks committed and Donpork with no cards in hand.
Yeah.
This is possibly a spot where, Little Newbie could just go aggressive, put his opponent on the 3-turn clock, like I just said there. You're going to be a turn ahead on the race, and your opponent committed the Barracks in an awkward spot. So that Axe Grinder, which is going to threaten some orb damage next turn, is only going to be 5 damage instead of 7, which would have put you on a 2-turn clock. So yeah, I definitely like the Huntmaster play here and just put your opponent on the clock.
This is where we see the strength of the new Huntmaster.
Yes.
So the Huntmaster can stay behind to defend along with the Tiki Healer, and the 8/9 is going to go like miles away from everything else on the board, and I don't think Red really has any ways that it can deal with something so strong. I think he played the Healer.
Especially with... I would actually keep the Healer in hand, just because this turn you're not Yeah, this turn you're not under any threat of lethal. You know your opponent. You've seen the extent of the deck. You know there's no taunts in there, so I think you could have kept it in hand and kind of hoped your opponent or force your opponent to commit more resources forward instead of playing something defensive that possibly would be a position where you lose the race that way.
This way, though, you are getting a trade in with either the Axe Grinder or the Ground Shaker by combining both the Healer and the Huntmaster. And that's taking away enough damage that it probably guarantees you win the game if you do manage to trade into both of them. So maybe we see maybe trade into one of these. He can't do it in any way that... Yeah, he can't... Unless he trades in with the Bloodsinger as well. On the Healer and with the Ground Shaker. So he can kind of clear both of these, but then he's so far behind by doing that, and he can't draw a card. So Donpork wants to draw a card every single turn right now, with his hand being what it is. So if you deny him the possibility to do that, then maybe it's better. I think it's close.
Yeah, see, this is where the playing the barracks, like preemptively playing the barracks, really punishes Donpork. Both of his creatures here were combined still going to kill the Apex if they both traded into it, and that didn't change with the barracks. And now he could have either played the barracks in a better position to actually kill off both of those creatures, or play it in a position where he actually pushes more orb damage this turn, and he gets neither of those accomplished because of the way he played his barracks out. So does pick up the Flame Spitter, which allows him to kill the Healer here, but actually doesn't even go for it. That one damage onto the Apex really doesn't represent anything. The enchantment isn't going to be enough, so...
I think he was meant to play the Brigand as well, because trading into the Apex with the Brigand and with the Flame Spitter, he could actually have got a clear with Bombslinger if he top decked that next turn. I think that was his only out, but with the Runin's Guidance...
Yeah, Runin's Guidance, obviously a very versatile card. We saw Little Newbie use it as a +2/2 to attempt to keep his early Living Willow alive. You can also use it as a life gain. So as much as this deck is kind of slow to develop, it does have the Tiki Healers and the Runin's Guidance to gain life to... once you've stabilized your creatures onto the board, recover your life at the same time. So, also the entire game so far, this Sturdy Shell on the left has been double collecting once it got into that position. Pretty sure that Donpork missed an attack onto, or no, it would have been in the wrong position to get the attack onto it last turn. Sorry. Garrett in there. No answer here from Donpork, so that Apex is going to take the game here for Little Newbie.
Yep, and I think that's 5... Is it 5-2? 5-3? I think that's the end of the game now, right?
That would be the end, yes. 1-2... I believe it was 2 wins for Donpork there. I'm not exactly sure on the score.
Yeah, I think he won 2 of the first 3, and then the red deck let him down.
Yeah, the red deck let him down here.
Who was it that created this deck?
What? Who was
it that created the deck that let Donpork down? Who can he
to be honest, I was the creator of both of the decks that were played in the last game. So we have Little Newbie taking the series again, 5-2 against Donpork. I think it really came down to the red against Sag matchup or red against red-yellow matchup, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I played this red deck a lot. It's basically my deck. I have this deck in my... I'm using this deck for 2 months now. I was playing it in the monthly qualifiers as well. And I think the problem with the red deck is it's... you often have a lot of lines how to play, and it's pretty hard to come back with the deck once you fall behind. So you have to play pretty optimal every turn to make this deck working. And I think he was probably lacking a bit of experience with that deck, and that was the key of not getting the 5 damage that were missing into the enemy's orb to make this deck successful. what broke his neck at the end.
Red Control is very difficult to play because you have like drastically different game plans for different matchups.
Yes.
It's not something like Blue Reaver, or Yellow Rush, where there's going to be smaller things, which more subtle like changes that you'll do in different matchups. But Red Control, you can play overwhelmingly different style versus different decks, and if you don't have a lot of experience with the deck, then it can be kind of to your own detriment, because it's not just a turn by turn by turn. What's the best play? You have to really think about the matchup over the whole matchup.
Yeah, I think I said it like earlier in the game. You basically have, or maybe in the game before, but you have all of these control tools, and you have to get the most value out of each of them. You can't just use it kind of just because it's the best value in that spot. It's what's the best value over the course of everything that your opponent can play. And if you get some of those things in the wrong order, or you don't get the maximum amount of value, you really fall behind pretty quick.
Yes. So that was kind of the neck breaker for Donpork, because he still had green left, and he still had the red-yellow Angry Gnat version as well left. So that were some pretty solid decks in the end. He still had green left, so it could have been a pretty tight series. But unfortunately, the red deck was his neck breaker in this series. So we see Little Nooby advancing again. So I have to search another opponent. he got his second crown.
Yeah, congratulations to
on the win streak.
Oh, on the win streak, yes. Last week where the Salugi was a pretty close series already. This one was close until the middle of the series, and then I mean the score is like the score gap in the end is bigger than the games actually were.
Yeah, it was very close back and forth for the first 4 games, and then again, just as soon as this red came out, Donpork just couldn't find the win on it over and over, not getting the value that he needed. Even in certain spots, the kind of the mistakes or the less optimal lines that we talked about as he went through them, but just wasn't able to find the right result there.
Anyway, we will have a new opponent for next week. We will have King of the Hill number 3 next week. I think it's probably on Sunday, because there is the monthly cup qualifier on Saturday, and I don't think there's any event scheduled for next Sunday.
Oh, is the metagaming not?
Yeah, the meta.
No, that's tomorrow. So I was going to do a.
I wanted to do a quick announcement for Scream, so everybody sign up for the metagaming tournament. I think you have the link, Scotch, probably. You can
it's metagaming.tv/championship. You can find all the links in there. You can find the Battlefy page to sign up, and then also our Discord link in there. Everything for that tournament will be run through our tournament Discord channel in the Metagaming TV Discord. It won't be run through the Faeria one, just because it's easier for us to keep track of things when we have, kind of limited the access to it over there, instead of the Faeria one, where it can kind of be just spammed and possibly can't keep up with it in that sort of way. But so that is tomorrow, 3 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. It's 10 a.m. for me. Another early one, of course, but got to get it in the prime spot for the European
afternoon. It's 4 p.m.
So.
Central European Time.
Yep.
And you can win a lot of hardware prizes.
Yeah.
We got some really cool prizes. Of course, Razer has provided us with some a headset, a mouse, and a mouse pad for the first, second, third place prizes there, as well as some cool stuff from Discord, as well as our 2 sponsors there. Also very lucky that Abercam was able to provide us with the Egg Bot, so you'll have your regular chances to win all of the regular stuff from the Egg Bot, same as you would during the monthly cup streams. I think that's it for that.
And I think you know more about that, but I think there is a Kappa Council today. Am I right?
Yeah, planning, I guess, 2.5 hours or so, 1 p.m. for me, but I think it's 7 p.m. Central European Time. We're planning to do a Kappa Council episode, which for any of you who don't know is the podcast. That'll be over on twitch.tv/metagamingtv, hosted by Scream. I'll be on it, and I forget who he said. He messaged me earlier.
Yeah, I want to know the guest, because I'm not invited, so I'm not a guest.
Okay. Sorry, just 1 second scrolling back.
I know he
first.
was asking Aquablood, but Aquablood has too much to do. So, but I don't know anything more about it. Well, it doesn't matter for the moment. Just tune in at I think 6 p.m. CET. Was it right?
7 p.m. Central
7
European Time.
PM.
It's gonna be Squiddy on with us.
Yeah, Squiddy,
Okay.
nice. So it's 7 p.m.
Shane or Squidlicious, I think it's his Twitch, but
Yeah, 2.5 hours from now. I hope you enjoyed the series. Tune in next week again. Thanks Salugi and thanks Scotch for doing the cast. And I will host you
Thanks for having
over
me.
to Cappuccino, who is currently streaming Pandora. So just stay on this channel. I will host you over to Cappuccino and enjoy enjoy watching him as well, as much as you enjoyed watching the King of the Hill. The VODs will be on YouTube by, I think, by end of tomorrow at latest. So I will do the VODs later on, put them on YouTube. So if anyone missed the series, you can rewatch it on YouTube then. And have a nice day.